Chapter 2249. The might of a palm strike. Two old men appeared silently beside the heavenless demon exalt in the air above the majestic imperial palace of the Tian Empire. The three of them were the foundation of the Tian Empire, the pillars of support as well as the only reason why the Tian Empire could stand as an everlasting empire. However, the two old men were quite a lot weaker than the heavenless demon exalt. They were first and second heavenly layer grand primes. What astonishing demonic aura! Who is this person? Is he the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult? The two old men both looked at the sky in shock. They were extremely grave. Even though they possessed terrifying cultivations that could be considered as nearing perfection on the cloud plane, they still felt pressure before the demonic aura. The great elder of the Empyrean demon cult? The heavenless demon exalt murmured. Then he sniggered. He has finally appeared. I've already waited for him for quite some time. Today, I would like to see whether the great elder who killed the lord of planet Tianming and dared to fight a whole elder of the God clan is as powerful as he is rumored to be. I hope he doesn't disappoint me. The two other grand primes of the Tian Empire both stopped worrying when they heard that. One of them said sternly, Heavenless, it'll be completely up to you to fend off the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult. The heavenless demon exalt nodded. At the same time, a terrifying presence surged from him. Demonic aura also filled his surroundings. He sneered, I'll go test out this great elder of the Empyrean demon cult. Stay vigilant and guard against any sneak attacks from the Heaven's Link Peak during this time. With that, the heavenless demon exalt shot off into the sky with surging demonic aura and a soaring presence. He flew towards the vast cloud that had engulfed the entire cloud plane. At that moment, the heavenless demon exalt's strength as a fourth heavenly layer grand prime was truly revealed. The energy that condensed around him caused space to collapse. His presence was so powerful that it caused the earth below to constantly sink. The Tian Empire had already activated their defensive formations. A barrier rose up, engulfing all the territory of the Tian Empire. There was a second and third formation within this formation. The second formation engulfed the huge imperial capital of the Tian Empire that stretched for 1,000,000 kilometers, while the third formation enveloped the imperial palace. The three formations were one more powerful than the last. Every single one of them had been personally cast down by the grand primes of the Tian Empire, so their defensive powers were extremely shocking. The heavenless demon exalt will be clashing with the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult. All the experts gathered outside the God's Fallen clan on the northern region stared at the pitch-black sky. They were all fixated on the direction of the central region. They were all supreme experts of the cloud plane. Even with the tremendous distance between the two planes, they could still envelop the imperial palace of the Tian Empire easily with the powerful senses of their souls. At the same time, Ming Dong hovered in the air under Uncle Ming's protection as he stared in the direction of the central region. Beside Ming Dong, the Empress and the ancestral emperors stood with rather pale faces. The three of them stared at the enshrouding demonic cloud as their hearts shivered. Suddenly, the tremendous cloud in the sky began to churn violently. A huge hand completely condensed from demonic aura suddenly reached out from the cloud, pressing down with terrifying might. The hand was truly humongous. It was 1,000,000 kilometers long, making it seem like a miniature continent. It enveloped the entire imperial capital of the Tian Empire. With the heavenless demon exalt in the lead, he launched an astonishing strike that possessed the might of a fourth heavenly layer grand prime collided loudly with the hand. Immediately, space collapsed and the sky cracked. The entire world seemed like it had shattered. The clash was terrifying and shocking, causing the entire central region to shake violently. A huge earthquake occurred, causing waves to toss and the land to move. Countless mountains collapsed as rivers shifted. A grand prime strike was extraordinary. If it were not for the protective formations, the entire Tian Empire would have probably been flattened from the ripples of energy. However, not only did the heavenless demon exalt strike fail to disperse the hand condensed from demonic aura, but the hand did not even stop at all. It continued to fall from the sky like it was unstoppable. The heavenless demon exalt happened to be exactly below the hand. As the hand fell, he was actually pushed to the ground as well. Oh no! The hearts of the two other Grand Primes of the Tian Empire sank when they saw this. They immediately flew out, working with the heavenless demon Exalt to face the huge hand. However, even when the three of them worked together, they failed to slow down the hand at all. In the end, with a heavy rumble, the hand forced down the three Grand Primes, shattered the three formations that protected the Tian Empire, and struck the imperial capital as if nothing could stop it. Immediately, great earthquakes overwhelmed the 5 regions of the cloud plain, and the cloud plain that originally hovered still in outer space began to drift from the strike. The palm strike had actually shifted the cloud plain's position in space. The majestic imperial capital of the Tian Empire had already vanished along with the beautifully decorated imperial palace. The entire imperial city was replaced by a bottomless handprint. The many lives moving about in the imperial city and the many experts who stood with the Tian Empire all perished from the palm strike. Only the 3 Grand Primes and 2 weak existences survived the palm strike. The 2 weak existences suffered no harm at all when the hull that trapped them was destroyed. The palm strike had forced the 3 Grand Primes deep underground. They all paled as blood flowed from the corner of their lips. Clearly, they were quite injured. The 2 unharmed existences were naturally Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling that the heavenless demon Exalt had captured. Currently, Xiao Ling and Xiao Jin hovered in the air, wrapped up in a cloud of demonic aura. Below them was not ground but a bottomless chasm the strike created. They were located below ground level. Wrapped up by the demonic aura, Xiao Jin looked around in complete shock. He was left dumbfounded. What happened? Xiao Jin was completely dumbstruck when he looked at the bottomless chasm below him. However, Xiao Ling was not thinking about what had happened at all. She could sense with great precision that an extremely familiar presence that invoked her memories had drifted over. Her eyes immediately reddened as tears poured out uncontrollably. She looked around at the darkness helplessly and sobbed, "Master, Master, where are you? Xiao Ling knows that you're already here. Where you?" Xiao Ling is scared. Don't abandon Xiao Ling. Like a mistreated child, Xiao Ling sobbed loudly. She cried extremely painfully, and there was also a sense of undisguised yearning. "Xiao Ling, don't be scared. Master is coming to take you back. From today onwards, no one will be able to harass you anymore." At this moment, a gentle voice rang out. A black-robed, middle-aged man appeared silently before Xiao Ling. No one knew when he had appeared there. It was like he had been there the entire time, fused with the surrounding demonic aura. No one discovered his traces. However, his gaze towards Xiao Ling was filled with love, like a father looking at his daughter. Along with it was some hidden pain. Xiao Ling cried even more vigorously when she saw the middle-aged man. She immediately threw herself into his bosom and cried loudly. Tears poured out like rain as if she was trying to vent all the hardships and longing she had accumulated across the years. Chapter 2250. Heavenless End. At the same time, all the Grand Primes who were gathered outside the God's Fallen clan stared in the direction of the Tian Empire in shock. They were absolutely frightened. The great elder of the Empyrean demon cult is actually so terrifying. He has reduced the imperial capital of the Tian Empire to nothing with just a single strike. That is far too terrifying, just far too terrifying. Even when the heavenless demon Exalt worked with the 2 other Grand Primes, they failed to prevent the destruction of the imperial capital. The Tian Empire is done for. No one can save them after they have offended such a terrifying figure. The heavenless demon Exalt had it coming. Of all the people he could provoke, he just had to choose the Empyrean demon cult. The experts who stood at the apex of the plane discussed outside the God's Fallen clan. All of them were particularly delighted about the arrogant heavenless demon Exalt's fate. There was also some gladness. They were glad that they did not choose to become enemies with the Empyrean demon cult. Otherwise, they would struggle to imagine the consequences. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak stood with his arms behind his back. His eyes were extremely deep. He stared in the direction of the central region and said slowly, "The heavenless demon Exalt became the most powerful on the cloud plane after reaching the 4th heavenly layer, reaching mid-Grand Prime. It made his confidence swell. He reached the conclusion that he was no weaker than the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult from the great elder's past battles, but in the end, he still underestimated the great elder far too much. The strength of the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult has exceeded my imagination. The might of his palm strike is actually enough to shift the position of the cloud plane. Now I'm even doubting whether the great elder was using his full strength against the 3 experts of the God clan back then. What terrifying strength! If I've guessed correctly, he should be the Empyrean demon lord Commander Yen mentioned, said the white-robed Uncle Ming sternly as stared at the central region from the air above the ruins of the Shi Empire's imperial capital. The Empyrean demon lord? Ming Dong asked seriously. He looked at Uncle Ming with some interest. Uncle Ming said sternly, the Empyrean demon lord is also known as the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult. The great elder is quite a mysterious figure in the saints' world. He has only shown himself a handful of times and rarely makes contact with experts of the same level. As a result, the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult seems especially mysterious in the eyes of many. However, he always took on the title as the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult in the saints' world. The title of Empyrean demon lord was coined by a few experts of the saints' world ever since he fought a hall elder and 2 great elders of the God clan. As a result, very few people know the actual name of Empyrean demon lord. Uncle Ming continued, the Empyrean demon lord is an extremely terrifying figure. I once heard from Commander Yen that over 100,000 years ago, he fought against the great elder in outer space. Back then, the cultivation of the great elder and Commander Yen was similar. They were both 6th heavenly layer grand primes. Uncle Ming looked at Ming Dong and asked, Ninth Majesty, who do you think emerged victorious from this battle? It's obviously Uncle Yen. I heard from my senior sister that Uncle Yan's cultivation method was personally created by my master, while the battle skills he uses comes from my master as well. Across the entire saints' world, there's probably no one who can match up to Uncle Yen at the same level of cultivation, Ming Dong said rather confidently. He knew extremely well that every single divine general within the heavenly palace of Bishing was picked through close screening. Every single one of them was an elite of the elites, a prodigy among prodigies. With their outstanding talent as a foundation, coupled with the devoted nurturing of the heavenly palace of Bishing, these divine generals possessed strength great enough to claim supremacy among the same level and challenge those at higher cultivation levels. As God Kings, they would definitely be supreme God Kings who could make it onto the God King's throne. At the primordial realm, they would be able to rival prodigies. And Commander Yen was the best of the best among all the divine generals. He was an amalgamation of powerful cultivation methods, battle skills, and various wondrous secret techniques. As a result, he was so powerful that he did not pale in comparison even when compared to the direct disciples of Grand Exalts. His only disadvantage was that he had no right to learn the authority of the Grand Exalt. How was it possible for someone as impressive as that to lose in a fair battle? However, Uncle Ming shook his head after listening to Ming Dong's rambling of absolute certainty. He sighed deeply. Commander Yen lost that battle. What? Uncle Yen was actually defeated? Ming Dong was taken aback when he heard that. Disbelief filled his face. Yun Xiaoyan, who was familiar with Commander Yen, let her little mouth hang agape as she showed shock. Commander Yen of the heavenly palace of Bishing was someone akin to a god of war in the saints' world. He created undefeated legends one after another. He had never encountered an equal at the same level of cultivation, nor did he ever suffer defeat. Even the ancestral emperor of her 1,000 Lotus Empire showed great admiration towards Commander Yen. That's right, Commander Yen lost. I heard this personally from Commander Yen. He completely admitted his loss and even said that if the direct disciples of Grand Exalts encountered the Empyrean Demon Lord, there would only be defeat as long as they did not use the authority of the Grand Exalt. Ninth Majesty, do you understand just how powerful the Empyrean Demon Lord is now? Uncle Ming said sternly. Ming Dong gasped deeply. His gaze towards the demonic cloud in the sky underwent some changes. Only Ming Dong, Yun Xiaoyan, and Uncle Ming could hear the conversation. Under Uncle Ming's interference, the Empress, Shi Yu, and the ancestral emperors heard nothing at all. Uncle Ming, let's return to the Tian Yuan clan. This has nothing to do with us anymore, said Ming Dong. Within the bottomless chasm created by the palm strike, the black-robed man held Xiao Ling gently. He said softly, Xiao Ling, they've abused you. Now, Master will take revenge for you. As he said that, the black-robed man gently clenched his hand, and the injured heavenless demon Exalt and the two other Grand Primes slowly drifted up under the restraint of pure demonic aura. They arrived before the black-robed man, and Xiao Ling immediately became frightened at the sight of the heavenless demon Exalt. She hid behind the black-robed man and stuck out her head from behind him. She stared at the heavenless demon Exalt viciously as she said fearfully, Master, it's him. It was this baddie. He's so scary. He bullied Xiao Ling and even said he would carve Xiao Ling to pieces. Sob sob. As if Xiao Ling had recalled the fright she experienced in the dark, scary world when she had been captured by the heavenless demon Exalt, she immediately burst into tears again. Carved to pieces. Good, very good. The black-robed man growled as his gaze became piercing. He radiated with killing intent. For you. It's impossible for the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult to possess such strength. The heavenless demon Exalt struggled as hard as he could under the restraints of the black-robed man. He glared at the black-robed man before him as he called out in regret. Undisguised dread filled the depths of his eyes. The strength of the black-robed man was so great that he felt powerless from the bottom of his heart due to fear. Only then did he suddenly realize just how puny he was with his cultivation as a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime. I am the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult, said the black-robed man. Then he opened his hand and the power of slaughter condensed. It formed sharp blades that rapidly revolved around the heavenless demon Exalt. Immediately, demonic blood that pulsed with powerful energy fell. The heavenless demon Exalt became littered with wounds in a single instance. Flesh and blood tossed about. He was being carved to pieces alive. It seemed like it was exactly because of what the heavenless demon Exalt had said to Xiao Ling to scare her that the situation would be reversed, and he would be suffering such a fate. Impossible, impossible! The heavenless demon Exalt roared out furiously as he began to struggle as hard as he could. He wanted to break free. He was a mighty fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime, yet he was being cut to pieces while restrained right now. This was something even more difficult to accept than death to the heavenless demon Exalt. After all, Grand Primes all had dignity. However, the restraints around him condensed from demonic aura were far more powerful than he had imagined them to be. Even with his strength, he was unable to break free. It was even more obvious whether the two other experts of the Tian Empire could break free or not. They could only watch the heavenless demon Exalt that they depended on the most suffer from humiliating torture. Xiao Ling, on the other hand, had already covered up her little head, unwilling to see such a bloody scene. My Empyrean demon chains are not as simple as a strand of pure demonic aura. They have been refined from the essence of the six worlds over a lengthy period of time. It's as tough as a high-quality god artifact, so you should stop wasting your efforts, the black-robed man said coldly. The blades under his control moved faster and faster, and in under a minute, the heavenless demon Exalt had truly been carved to pieces. His entire body had been reduced to a white skeleton. Even his head was not spared. It was reduced to a skull, only leaving behind a flickering soul. The great elder looked at the Empyrean demon Exalt's soul, and his gaze flickered with a certain light. Sensing his gaze, the heavenless demon Exalt seemed to realize something. He immediately shivered as great fear rose up from the bottom of his heart. He said, using his soul in a hurry, "Don't kill me, don't kill me. I will yield to you. I will become a servant of yours and follow your commands." Chapter 2251. I don't need it. You want to yield to me? The black-robed man stared at the heavenless demon Exalt's shining soul as he scoffed. That's right. I'm willing to yield to you, to become your subordinate and serve you wholeheartedly, the heavenless demon Exalt said in a hurry. The two other Grand Primes of the Tian Empire both heard his messages clearly. Immediately, the faces of the two Grand Primes darkened. They seemed defeated. The Empyrean demon cult. The Empyrean Demon Cult. It's all because of offending the Empyrean Demon Cult that our Tian Empire has been reduced to this. Heavenless, you've doomed our entire Tian Empire. Sigh, if we had known earlier, we would have stopped you with everything we had when you targeted the Empyrean Demon Cult before. The two Grand Primes were filled with regret. However, they also understood that regret could change nothing. The Tian Empire was done for. Basically all of the central and peak powers of the Tian Empire were gathered within the Imperial Palace for orders, but in the end, they were all destroyed by that terrifying palm strike. According to my knowledge, there's no other Grand Prime in the Empyrean Demon Cult aside from you, while I am a Grand Prime that has reached the 4th heavenly layer. If I join, it'll only make the Empyrean Demon Cult even more powerful, the Heavenless Demon Exalt said in a hurry. He was basically willing to do anything because he knew extremely well that his awaiting fate would be worse than death if he did not do this. You're right. Aside from me, there is no other Grand Prime in the Empyrean Demon Cult, the black-robed man said gently, but his gaze towards the Heavenless Demon Exalt remained cold. The Heavenless Demon Exalt became relieved. However, just when he thought the Great Elder had accepted him, the Great Elder's next words condemned him to a hellish fate once again. Too bad I don't need it. With that, the Heavenless Demon Exalt's head immediately exploded. A hand condensed from demonic aura had directly shattered his skull, grabbing his soul in an extremely brutal manner. No! The Heavenless Demon Exalt shrieked out in a miserable manner, but this only lasted for a few seconds. His soul vanished from the hands of the Great Elder, having been stowed away. Afterwards, the Great Elder of the Empyrean Demon Cult looked towards the two other Grand Primes of the Tian Empire. The destruction of the Empyrean Demon Cult and the capture of the girl was all done by Heavenless. It has nothing to do with us, a Grand Prime sighed gently. His eyes were gloomy as he was ashen. The Great Elder said nothing at all. His eyes were cold, emotionless, and merciless. He directly extended a hand and retrieved two shining souls. Having lost their souls, the bodies of the two Grand Primes immediately fell powerlessly. The powerful presences that radiated from their bodies rapidly declined, and in just a while, their presences completely vanished from the surroundings. The Heavenless Demon Exalt has died. The two others in the Tian Empire have died as well. An everlasting empire has been destroyed just like this, with a simple gesture. The peak experts gathered outside the God's Fallen clan sighed emotionally. All of their expressions were extremely mixed. In the past few days, the Tian Empire had pressured them to the point of suffocation, yet the powerful everlasting empire had rapidly declined in such a short amount of time, having been reduced to nothing. This huge development had quite a psychological impact on all of them. Send orders to mobilize everyone immediately and slaughter the remaining forces of the Tian Empire. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak sent down orders rapidly before looking at the peak experts around him. He said sternly, "Everyone, let's wait here for now and receive the Great Elder of the Empyrean Demon Cult." All the peak experts gathered there were shocked when they heard that. Someone immediately cried out, "What did you say? The Great Elder of the Empyrean Demon Cult will be coming here?" At this moment, all of their expressions changed. They only held some dread towards the Great Elder before they had witnessed him fight, but now, they were completely filled with fear and unease. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak nodded. He looked towards the God's Fallen clan and said, "Please ask Houston to come." The Peak Lord's voice directly rang out in the depths of the God's Fallen clan, in a quiet, little courtyard prepared for the Heavens Link Peak. The white-robed Sacred Feather stood on a roof within the Tian Yuan clan. He stared at the churning demonic clouds in the sky in shock. Whether it was the Tian Yuan clan, the divine kingdom of Ping Tian, or the entire southern region, their skies had all been shrouded by the demonic clouds, making it pitch dark. Lanterns were lit up everywhere in the Tian Yuan clan and the various streets of the provincial city. They used the weak firelight to purge the surrounding darkness, providing some illumination. So powerful! Sacred Feather thought as he was extremely shocked. Sacred Feathered Tiger Emperors should strengthen, slaughter, and grow in the blood of enemies, not like what you're doing, cultivating slowly in peace and ease. You'll only become a flower raised in a greenhouse like that. You won't be able to bear any burden. At this moment, a voice rang out from behind Sacred Feather. The sudden voice surprised Sacred Feather. He suddenly looked back and saw that a black-robed man had appeared silently behind him. His black clothes merged with the darkness, making him seem like a part of the surroundings. Sacred Feather immediately staggered backwards. He glanced at the formation around the entire Tianyuan clan as he cried out, "How did you get in here?" "This formation can stop chaotic primes, but it can't stop me," the black-robed man said indifferently. At this moment, Sacred Feather's eyes adapted to the darkness, and he finally saw the black-robed man's face. It shocked him. "Here." Sacred Feather stared straight at the black-robed man with widened eyes as disbelief filled his face. "You've probably guessed my true identity already, and you're right," said the black-robed man. "Then, how should I refer to you?" Sacred Feather calmed down very quickly and said with mixed feelings. "Mo Tianyun is my real name, not something that I made up," said the black-robed man. Afterwards, his gaze suddenly became piercing. He stared at Sacred Feather closely and said sternly, "We, the Sacred Feathered Tiger Emperors, possess one of the most powerful bloodlines in the world, enough to directly rival the ancestral dragons. However, the power of our bloodline and our limitless potential can only be awakened through trials of life and death, through navigating through mountains of corpses, and the baptism of the blood of our enemies. If you remain within the Tianyuan clan and avoid these battles, it will only be detrimental. In the end, it will only waste the power of your bloodline." Mo Tianyun spoke powerfully, lecturing his junior like an elder. Sacred Feather became ashamed. He said, "I know. I'm only staying here to wait for my elder brother to return." "Your elder brother?" Mo Tianyun was slightly surprised, but his eyes deepened in the next moment. Predictions flashed through his eyes, and in the next moment, he knew who Sacred Feather was talking about. He said, "Jianchen is fine. You don't need to worry about him. You should walk the path you need to go down on. We Sacred Feathered Tiger Emperors originally came from the Immortals' world. We don't belong in the Saints' world. We will kill our way back to the Immortals' world one day and take revenge. When that day comes, I hope you can protect yourself at the very least," said Mo Tianyun. As soon as he mentioned revenge, Mo Tianyun struggled to remain completely composed. His emotions fluctuate slightly. Afterwards, he passed a talisman to Sacred Feather and said, "This teleportation talisman will take you to a certain place before leading you to a ruined world. The world in question is the ruins of the spirit's world. The environment there is horrible and filled with danger, where the slightest carelessness can result in death. However, fortuitous encounters accompany danger. It will be a good place for you to train. When you are ready, go. Many primordial realm experts have died there, but once you go, I won't provide any assistance to you. It will all be up to you. Do not disgrace the bloodline of the Sacred Feather Tiger Emperors." Mo Tianyun vanished silently after leaving the talisman behind. He left just like how he had come, where the formation around the Tianyuan clan seemed completely irrelevant. The peak experts all stood outside the God's Fallen clan silently as they waited. Many of them were nervous. Houston also happened to be among them in his blood-red robes. He stood beside the Peak Lord quietly. At this moment, a black-robed figure who seemed to be a part of the darkness appeared there silently. He stood with his arms behind his back, 100 meters away from the peak experts. He was Mo Tianyun. His arrival immediately made the peak experts narrow their eyes. They were extremely stern. "You've finally come." The peak lord looked at the figure in the darkness and said sternly. Mo Tianyun did not look at the peak experts gathered there. Instead, he stared at Houston, who stood beside the peak lord, as he became emotional. There were even undisguised excitement and eagerness in the depths of his eyes. However, he calmed down very soon. He looked at the white-robed, sagely peak lord who stood at the front and said, "Thank you for taking care of him for all these years." The peak lord inhaled deeply and said slowly, "I saved him back then for the sake of the Cloud Plain. I do not wish to see all the lives on the Cloud Plain massacred. My matters with the Tian Empire end here. I'll leave the rest up to you." With that, Mo Tianyun no longer said anything more. He waved his hand and demonic aura wrapped around Houston before they both disappeared. Chapter 2252. The Empyrean demon cult retreats. Over a dozen men and women of various ages hovered beyond the cloud plane. All of their gazes were fixed on the demonic cloud that had enveloped the entire cloud plane as undisguised joy and excitement filled their faces. Along with those emotions, there was respect and reverence from the bottom of their hearts. These people were all high-ranking members of the Empyrean demon cult. The remaining 7 elders were all present, radiating with the presences of the primordial realm. Apart from the 7 elders, there were 4 large, burly men. They wore black clothes as they stood there coldly and emotionlessly. The gazes of the 4 men were all sharp and filled with killing intent. They all gave off a heavy presence of blood. Clearly, their presences were far, far more powerful than the 7 elders. Even among the 7 elders, some of them looked at the 4 men in slight dread. This was because the 4 men were the remaining generals of the Empyrean demon cult. Both the elders and generals stood there silently as if they were waiting for something. At this moment, a powerful demonic aura suddenly appeared before them. Enveloped within it was a hazy figure. "Greetings to the great elder." All the important members of the Empyrean demon cult bowed politely towards the demonic aura. "Great elder, not only has the cloud plane destroyed one of our branches, but even the Grand Elder has been heavily injured. He almost met his end, while War Demon is dead. This grievance is absolutely irreconcilable. Great Elder, please give the orders so that we can soak the cloud plane in blood. Great Elder, please give the orders so that the armies of our cult can soak the cloud plane in blood," the 4 generals all said together. They radiated with killing intent and an intense smell of blood. The 5 generals were like brothers that had been through thick and thin together. Now that one of them was dead, the remaining 4 were naturally filled with resentment. "I have already killed the heavenless demon Exalt, and the Tian Empire has ceased to exist. The matters of the cloud plane end here," the great elder within the demonic aura said firmly, as if his words were an imperial edict, a representation of the will of the universe that could not be defied at all. "As the great elder wishes," the 4 generals replied politely. Before the great elder, they could only yield to all his decisions. They dared not object at all. Even when they were extremely reluctant to just let the matter end like this, they dared not say anything else. Great Elder Huayan, one of the 3 vice leaders of the branch on the cloud plane, has betrayed the Empyrean demon cult. I used a secret technique to discover that Huayan is still alive. Great Elder, please give the orders so that we can capture him, a woman in black armor said politely from behind the 7 elders. The woman possessed truly devastating beauty. Her words and actions were all presented with enchanting charm. Not only did the armor on her fail to affect her beauty at all, but it even added a special bearing instead. This woman was the commander of the 7th Army of the branch on the cloud plane, Yashi Lian. The great elder thought about it before saying slowly, "There will be someone looking for Huayan for revenge. We don't need to pay any attention to him. From today onwards, we will be retreating from the cloud plane. Do not try to interfere with the matters on the cloud plane anymore." "Yes, sir." Everyone gathered there answered. Even though they were doubtful about why they had to give up on the cloud plane, none of them dared to ask. Afterwards, the situation on the cloud plane was immediately reversed. The deaths of the peak experts from the Tian Empire had weakened their alliance drastically. Afterwards, the remaining forces of the alliance were also attacked by the various great and peak clans under the lead of the Heavens Link Peak, immediately forcing them into a retreat. Very soon, they lost control over the central region. The remaining forces of the Tian Empire broke out of the encirclement under the lead of 4 Grand Primes, and they retreated to the southern region of the cloud plane. They cast down many formations, preparing to use the southern region as their final line of defense to fend off the attacks from the alliance led by the Heavens Link Peak. Due to the previous battles, the alliance under the Heavens Link Peak had suffered heavy casualties. Under the efforts of the 4 Eternal Empires, the majority of their forces suffered heavy losses, so they clearly no longer possessed the power to deal with the remaining forces of the Tian Empire's alliance anymore even when they wanted to. They were unable to afford an even greater loss, so hunting down the remaining forces became a very slow process. They were unable to bear the consequences of a full-blown war, just like how the alliance of the Tian Empire was unable to bear the consequences of a war to the death. If the few remaining Grand Primes of the Tian Empire's alliance really became desperate, the side of the Heaven's Link Peak would have to pay quite a hefty price to kill them. It might even lead to the death of a Grand Prime on their side. None of the Grand Primes that stood on the Heaven's Link Peak's side was willing to go down with their opponents. As a result, they became locked in a stalemate with the remaining forces of the Tian Empire. The imperial family of the Shi Empire was unable to lighten up either. When the Shi Emperor went to the God's Fallen clan to explain the chaos of the Shi Empire, it did not proceed as smoothly as initially imagined under the interference of the ancestors of the Heaven-Cracking sect and Sword sect of Four Poles. Moreover, the ancestral emperor of the Shi Empire, Shi Lianxue, had completely fallen silent. He had completely gone missing. Losing a ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime was a loss so great that it was inestimable to the Shi Empire. And as the God's Fallen clan's stance on the matter remained unknown, the imperial family was in constant danger. There was only a single place that could be considered a peaceful on the cloud plain that was covered with battles, and that place was the Tianyuan clan. The Tianyuan clan was the only organization that did not have to worry about being affected by the complicated circumstances of the upheavals on the cloud plain. Even the divine kingdom of Pingtian struggled to remain as calm with all the upheaval. The remaining forces of the Tian Empire's alliance have actually fled to the southern region, and they've taken control of the Blood Sun Empire? Ming Dong, who had just returned, also received news of the retreat. It made him frown slightly. Uncle Ming, the formation around the provincial city needs strengthening. I need to declare to the entire southern region that the provincial city is not a place where they can act up in through this formation. As long as they don't infringe on the provincial city, I don't care how much trouble they cause. It has nothing to do with me even if they mess up the entire southern region. But if they come to the provincial city, a vicious gleam of light immediately flashed through Ming Dong's eyes when he reached the end. Uncle Ming nodded and immediately went to complete the arrangements. Before long, Sacred Feather suddenly bid farewell to everyone in the Tianyuan clan before activating the talisman from Mo Tianyun. He left the Tianyuan clan and went to the ruins of the world where the spirit sages came from. What a powerful talisman! Where did he get this from? Uncle Ming sensed the talisman in the instant it was activated, and he immediately became doubtful. Jian Chen had already returned to the Soaring Clouds Peak with Bai Yu back on the desolate plain. However, the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Exin, had been waiting there for quite some time already. As soon as he saw the two of them return, a glad smile immediately appeared on his rather pale face. "Greetings, sir." "Greetings, sir." Jian Chen and Bai Yu both greeted Han Exin. Han Exin's face was filled with undisguised pride. He said, "I already know what happened on the sky-gazing peak. Changyang, your performance has taken me by surprise. Currently, my Soaring Clouds Peak only has 3 disciples, and you have the weakest cultivation. I never thought that you would be the one who would make my Soaring Clouds Peak proud." As he said that, Han Exin had already raised his hand slowly. Immediately, pure radiant saint force condensed on his hand, and he said, "Changyang, you're injured. Come, let me heal you." With that, Han Exin pressed his hands towards Jian Chen's chest. Jian Chen took a step back in a hurry and said, "Thank you for your concern, sir. It's best if I deal with my wounds myself. If I always depend on my teacher in the brutal saint's world, I'll be destined to be useless." Han Exin nodded in appreciation. "That's very reasonable. If that's the case, I will be bidding farewell first. Go heal up properly, and once you've done that, come to the mountain top. I have things to ask you, and I'll also pass on some radiant arts of higher grades to you to comprehend. Moreover, I'll personally invoke the laws of the hallowed for you so that you can become a hallowed saint master sooner. I believe you have the potential. Remember, being a hallowed saint master is the path that leads us to becoming an expert. You will always remain as an ant as long as you haven't become a hallowed saint master." After throwing that out there, Han Exin drifted away. Chapter 2253, Resentment After Han Xan left. Bai Yu looked at Jian Qin in admiration. Perhaps due to being overly excited, her face was completely red. Junior brother? No, senior brother, I never thought you would actually defeat Wenqing. You're far too powerful, far too outstanding. From today onwards, you're my second senior brother. Bai Yu clung onto Jian Chen's arm and said happily. She failed to notice that as she hugged him, Jian Chen's arm was wedged between her breasts. Senior brother, tell me quickly how you defeated Wenqing. You have to teach me so that I can also beat him up the next time I see him. Bai Yu looked at Jian Chen hopefully with her large, bright eyes. They were filled with eagerness and anticipation. Weren't you outside the ring back then, junior sister? You clearly saw how I defeated Wenqing. Jian Chen smiled bitterly as he broke free from Bai Yu's grasp rather awkwardly. It was also at this moment that Bai Yu suddenly realized Jian Chen's arm was touching a forbidden region of a woman. It made her face redden slightly, and she immediately let go of Jian Chen's arm. Afterwards, she said in annoyance, I don't care. You have to teach me. I want to learn your trick of controlling Radiant Saint Force, or I won't let you go. With that, Bai Yu spread out her hands and blocked Jian Chen's way. It seemed like she would not let Jian Chen leave unless he agreed. Jian Chen felt helpless as he looked at Bai Yu. He said, all right. I'll do my best to teach you. Junior Bai Yu, I need to go heal first, so can you let me return? Jian Chen pointed at the bloody clothes he wore before casually glancing at the distance. He looked at a place ridden with bushes and weeds. The first senior brother of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Zhuofeng, hid there silently under the cover of the vegetation with his presence completely concealed. Looking at how Bai Yu treated Jian Chen with so much familiarity, his handsome face completely sank while his gaze towards Jian Chen was filled with deep hatred and envy. Bastard! Wenqing is useless. How did he lose to the hands of Chang Yang, who only has a one-colored soul core? To think that even I, the mighty first senior brother of the Soaring Clouds Peak with a three-colored soul core had been injured by Wenqing, yet Wenqing just happened to lose against Chang Yang who has a one-colored soul core. Doesn't that mean I'm nowhere near as great as a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core? What will the seniors and brothers of the other peaks think of me? Zhuofeng's anger grew the more he thought about it. His face became terrifyingly sunken. He clenched his fists tightly as his nails had plunged into his skin deeply. The person who had defeated him, Wenqing, actually lost to the person who he never took seriously, Chang Yang, under everyone's gazes. It made Zhuofeng feel like he was a joke. Coupled with how dependent Bai Yu seemed after Chang Yang's glorious victory, Zhuofeng felt even more furious. He began to hate Jian Chen as a result. By now, Jian Chen had returned to his dwelling. He tidied up the messy place again before casting down a simple, low-level formation at the entrance. Then he sat down in the center of the dwelling. He did not heal the injury on his chest. He needed no intentional healing at all when dealing with such a small wound thanks to the automatic regeneration of his chaotic body. Not only have my senses greatly increased after my soul fused with the strand of chaotic force, but I can also sense the laws of the world with even greater clarity. Even the Radiant Saint Force I control seems to be rather different. It has become much more powerful. Moreover, my almost perfect usage of Radiant Saint Force doesn't seem to be completely caused by the strength of my soul. I feel like it has something to do with what happened to my soul. Jian Chen recalled every detail of his battle against Wenqing as he sank into his thoughts for a very long time. He still had not completely understood how significant the changes were after his soul had fused with a sliver of true chaotic force. He did not know what unique abilities it had brought him or even whether it would leave behind any problems. After the fusion of the twin swords, the sword spirits had fallen into a slumber. He was unable to awaken them no matter what, so Jian Chen could only give up on the thought of asking them about it. 3 days later, Jian Chen emerged from the dwelling. He made his way to the top of the mountain as he basked in bright light. He saw Han Xan, who had spent most of his time in seclusion. Han Xian's face was still rather pale. Clearly, he was quite injured, where he failed to make a complete recovery after several days even with his abilities as a Radiant God King. Chang Yang, I witnessed your entire battle against Wenqing the other day. Your grasp and usage of Radiant Saint Force has amazed me. Moreover, I can tell your experience in battle is extremely plentiful as well. You must have gone through many dangerous trials before you joined the Radiant Saint Hall. It is my honor to have such an outstanding student like you. Han Exen was extremely amiable. He praised Jianchen fiercely at the beginning before passing on some radiant arts of an even higher grade to Jianchen. In the end, Han Exen even went as far as to invoke the laws of the hallowed for Jianchen personally. He hoped that Jianchen could become a hallowed saint master sooner. Jianchen closed his eyes as he began to comprehend Han Exion's laws of the hallowed seriously. Although he had already comprehended the laws of the hallowed, his comprehension of the laws remained at a rudimentary level. On the other hand, Han Exion's comprehension of the laws of the hallowed had already reached God King. As a result, the laws of the hallowed invoked by Han Exion would still bring much assistance to Jianchen. Several hours later, Jianchen slowly opened his eyes. He saw that Han Exion had already stopped invoking the laws long ago. Currently, he sat before Jianchen as he looked at him with shining eyes. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Chang Yang, how did your comprehension go? Han Exion asked. I managed to benefit somewhat. Han Exen nodded in satisfaction. Becoming a hallowed saint master is definitely not something that can be accomplished in a single day. Chang Yang, cultivate well. I hope you can become a hallowed saint master when you have a two-colored soul core. Sir, what about becoming a hallowed saint master with a one-colored soul core? Jianchen asked. Becoming a hallowed saint master with a one-colored soul core? Han Exen broke out into laughter. He pointed at Jianchen and said, Chang Yang, what are you thinking? Do you think the laws of the hallowed are that easy to comprehend? I want you to become a hallowed saint master when you have a two-colored soul core because I have extremely high hopes for you. It's best if you don't even think about becoming a hallowed saint master with a one-colored soul core. Is comprehending the laws of the hallowed with a one-colored soul core really that difficult? Jianchen asked. It's not just difficult. Chang Yang, do you know when was the last time a prodigy became a hallowed saint master when they had a one-colored soul core? Before Jianchen could reply, Han Exen answered his own question. I'll tell you. It was over 1,000,000 years ago. Our Radiant Saint Hall is able to accept many disciples every year, so who knows how many have been accepted over 1,000,000 years. Many prodigies with monstrous talents will appear within them, but there hasn't been a single disciple among them who has managed to comprehend the laws of the hallowed with a one-colored soul core. Now, do you understand just how difficult it is to become a hallowed saint master with a one-colored soul core? I understand. Jianchen clasped his fist towards Han Exen. Han Exen exhaled deeply and looked at Jianchen with brimming interest. He said sternly, however, if you really do comprehend the laws of the hallowed and become a hallowed saint master with a one-colored soul core, you'll immediately become the chosen saint. There will be no need for a selection at all. You'll become a figure of great prestige in the Radiant Saint Hall, where the Radiant Saint Hall will nurture you unconditionally for the next millennia. Even if there is a new chosen saint, you'll be able to stand on equal grounds or even surpass them with your potential alone if you become a hallowed saint master with a one-colored soul core. The resources you will be able to use will be even greater than what the chosen saint has access to. Chang Yang, although becoming a hallowed saint master with a one-colored soul core is extremely difficult, do your best to achieve it if you really can succeed. Chapter 2254. Experts gather after leaving the mountain top. Jianchen returned to his dwelling. He closed his eyes and sank into his thoughts there. Aside from Emotianyun, no one else knew he had become a hallowed saint master with a one-colored soul core. He knew from Han Exen that as long as he exposed his identity as a hallowed saint master, the selection of the chosen saint would immediately be annulled, and he would directly become the current chosen saint. After that, he would receive the unconditioned nurturing of the Radiant Saint Hall for the next millennia. Once he became the chosen saint, there would be no difficulty in him entering the Tower of Radiance. He would no longer have to go through all the troubles required for an opportunity to enter the Tower of Radiance. But at the same time, he would become the center of attention if he became the chosen saint. He would be someone that everyone paid attention to and talked about in the Radiant Saint Master. Naturally, many people would investigate him. Although he had Emo Tianyun's mask right now, the mask was only enough to obscure his true identity from most experts. Once he accidentally created a hole in his story, it would be impossible to ensure that observant people would not realize that his identity was fake through these traces. It did not matter too much if his martial soul force was exposed. At most, he would just flee from the Radiant Saint Hall. However, if his other identity was exposed, it would not be as simple as escaping from the Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, Jian Chen became very hesitant about whether he should become the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall. However, Jian Chen's face changed in the next moment. He suddenly looked towards the sky, and his gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the rock above him, allowing him to see the world outside. He could clearly sense the senses of an extremely powerful soul sweep across the territory of the Radiant Saint Hall without any disguise at all. It basically scoured every inch of the land there. In the next moment, a powerful formation rose up, enveloping the entire territory of the Radiant Saint Hall. This was the Radiant Saint Hall's protective formation. It was extremely powerful. The senses of the soul that had swept through the Radiant Saint Hall had activated the formation. Jian Chen's heart sank slightly. He made his way out of his dwelling and looked at the screen of light created by the formation. He fell silent. The screen of light flickered from time to time. Every flicker represented the fact that it had stopped the invasion of the powerful senses of a soul. From how many times it had flickered, it seemed to have stopped over 10 of them. The Radiant Saint Hall will be closing its gates temporarily. All disciples are forbidden from going out during this time without the permission of an elder. At the same time, an ancient voice boomed out like a great bell, resounding through the entire Radiant Saint Hall. Jian Chen looked towards the origins of the voice. He saw that in the distance, a black-robed old man who stood with his arms behind his back in the sacred hall beyond the clouds. He was the one who had called out sternly, "An expert with a soul tree." Jian Chen immediately sensed the old man's cultivation, and he discovered that this old man had surpassed the 7-colored soul core and condensed a soul tree. That was equivalent to primordial realm experts among fighters. It looks like the people searching for the Eneta Tower have come to the desolate plain, Jian Chen thought. At that moment, he could not help but feel glad about the mask from Mo Tianyun, or his identity would have probably been completely exposed from the senses of the soul earlier. Afterwards, Jian Chen remained in seclusion. He comprehended the radiant arts he had received from Han Xin and also spent a lot of effort in studying the changes to his soul. He did not emerge, maintaining an extremely low profile. The seclusion this time lasted half a month. During that time, everyone's attention shifted away from the defeat of a Radiant Saint Master with a 3-colored soul core to Chang Yang, who had a 1-colored soul core because the Radiant Saint Hall was closed off. During that time, Baiyu regularly paid visits to Jian Chen's dwelling, pestering Jian Chen to teach her his tricks to using Radiant Saint Force. She constantly called out to him as senior brother. However, Jian Chen did not become annoyed at all. Jian Chen did have a good impression of Baiyu. When the 4 people from the Snowfall Peak came to make trouble for him, Baiyu was the only person willing to step forward and help him on the Soaring Clouds Peak. At the same time, she was the only person who had truly cared for him. As such, Jian Chen truly accepted her like his younger sister. Senior brother, senior brother. At this moment, the protective formation outside Jian Chen's dwelling fluctuated and Baiyu ran in, huffing and puffing. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes. He looked at Baiyu calmly and asked, "Junior sister, what has happened that has made you so hurried?" "Senior brother, I just returned from the main peak, and I heard an astonishing piece of news from there," Baiyu said excitedly. Jian Chen was interested. He asked, "What news?" Baiyu took in a breath and said, "Senior brother, you always spend your time in seclusion, so you probably don't know about the huge matter that has happened on the desolate plain. I only just heard the envoys mention it on the main peak. They said that many peak experts have gathered on the desolate plain. The arrival of these peak experts has made all the powerful organizations and clans on the desolate plain close their gates and restrain their clansmen and disciples as if they're about to confront a huge enemy. It said that these foreign peak experts can easily throw the desolate plain into turmoil. But do you know why they've all come? Senior brother, you probably won't believe it even if I tell you. All these peak experts have come to the desolate plain just to find a god king called Jianqin. Bai Yu sat down on the ground in an unwomanly manner as she sighed in amazement. Heavens! I really never thought that so many peak experts would come personally just for a god king. I really do wonder what heinous crimes this god king has committed to offend so many peak experts all at once. Jianqin remained calm when he heard that. He said, Junior sister, why are you so certain that this person called Jianqin has committed heinous crimes? Isn't that obvious? If he didn't commit heinous crimes, why would he have offended so many peak experts at the same time? Bai Yu said naively. Afterwards, she said seriously, but speaking of which, I really do admire this senior called Jianqin because he's able to avoid being detected while being hunted down by so many peak experts. That's really impressive. Jianqin fell silent. A while later, he suddenly stood up and said, Junior sister, I need to go somewhere first. Once I return, I'll teach you how to better control Radiant Saint Force. Chapter 2255. Donglin Yanxue Jianqin left the soaring cloud's peak. Using his Radiant Saint Force, he steadily flew towards the depths of the Radiant Saint Hall. The territory of the Radiant Saint Hall was extremely vast. Whether it was from the east to the west or the south to the north, there were 1,000,000 kilometers. There were thousands of mountains within this tremendous region, with 99 of them as main peaks. Jianqin directly made his way towards one of the 99 peaks, the Guardian Peak. Very soon, Jianqin left the boundary of the sky-gazing peak. He stood with his hands behind his back as he moved through the mountains while surrounded by milky white Radiant Saint Force. He would be obscured by the clouds from time to time. Along the way, he encountered many Radiant Saint Masters, and a few of them recognized Jianqin. This person seems to be Changyang from around the sky-gazing peak. Why has he come here? Changyang? That one-star genius with a one-colored soul core who defeated a Radiant Saint Master with a three-colored soul core? Yeah, he really does look like Changyang. However, Changyang is just a one-star genius. I think there's probably another side to the story for a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core to defeat a Radiant Saint Master with a three-colored soul core. You're right. The rumor is not trustworthy. If Changyang was a 9-star genius, it would make more sense. After all, 9-star geniuses have the ability to challenge those at higher cultivation levels. However, Changyang is just a 1-star genius. In terms of talent, he is even worse than me. Is it Junior Changyang of the sky-gazing peak up ahead? I am Qizheng of the Battle Peak. I wish to spar with Junior Changyang. Similar voices rang out constantly. There were many people who publicly stated their identities and wanted to spar with Jianqin. After all, Jianqin had perpetuated his fame by defeating Wenqing on the sky-gazing peak. Even though his name had not reached the Sacred Hall and garnered the attention of the elders yet, he was basically someone that everyone outside the Sacred Hall knew about. Jianqin ignored the suspicions and challenges from the surroundings. He focused on hurrying along, and he moved faster and faster. Especially when he discovered that a few Radiant Saint Masters were pursuing him, he charged into the clouds and used the Radiant Wings, shaking them off with even greater speed. He had no time to waste on these people right now. Changyang is actually cowering in fear. He dares not say anything at all. What does that mean? It means he has a guilty conscience. You can tell from this that Changyang's battle on the sky-gazing peak was probably fake. Jianqin's constant avoidance instead provided greater evidence for the suspicions of the Radiant Saint Masters. Several hours later, Jianqin finally arrived at this destination, the Myriad Flowers Peak. The Myriad Flowers Peak also happened to be one of the 99 main peaks. Due to being covered in thousands of orchids, a heavy fragrance always lingered on the Myriad Flowers Peak. Jianqin began to conceal his presence after arriving here. Immediately, he vanished from everyone's view, avoiding the layers of formations on the mountain as he carefully infiltrated his way towards the top. At this moment, two white-robed women strolled down on a small path that winded through the mountains. They conversed as they walked. Among the two, one of them seemed to be middle-aged. She was elegant and graceful and had quite the bearing. She possessed the presence of someone important. She was the lord of the myriad flowers peak, Donglin Qiushui. The other woman only seemed to be in her 20s. She was like a goddess, with a fair complexion and dark pupils. She gave off a holy presence as if she was inviolable. She was Donglin Yanshue. She was a great beauty as well as one of the 5 candidates for the next chosen saint. Yanshue, the competition for chosen saint is about to begin. Who knows how great of an influence it is to your future, so you have to cultivate seriously in the sacred hall at a crucial time like this. You can't come here often, the lord of the myriad flowers peak, Donglin Qiushui, said sincerely. Donglin Yanshue sighed gently. She said, Auntie, your hopes on me are too great. Out of the 5 candidates, Gongzheng Xian and Xen been getting close to late 4-colored soul cores. By the time the day of the selection comes, it's extremely likely for the 2 of them to have reached it. The N and sure to also have mid 4-colored soul cores, while my cultivation is the weakest out of the 5 of us. Even the elders who guided me in the sacred hall do not think I can win against them and become the current chosen saint. As a result, I have no expectations of becoming the chosen saint at all. Donglin Yanshue's voice was filled with helplessness. Don't become downhearted. Isn't there still another 2 years? With your talent, it's not impossible for you to break through once again if you put in the effort. Once you have a mid 4-colored soul core, you'll be standing at the same level as the 4 of them. Only a tiny difference will remain, Donglin Yanshue cheered her on. I can only do my best in these 2 years, Donglin Yanshue said softly. She frowned slightly, clearly feeling pressured. Auntie, I'm rather tired. I'll go back to rest first. All right. Donglin Yanshue returned to the mountaintop. She sat on a dark rock within the quiet courtyard her auntie had bestowed upon her as she sank into her thoughts. Everyone wants to become the chosen saint, but it's almost impossible for me to defeat the 4 other 9-star geniuses. Donglin Yanshue was bitter. At the same time, she was unwilling to just give in. Out of the 5 candidates, she was the youngest and also the one who had cultivated for the shortest amount of time, so this competition was very unfair towards her. If she had enough time, she was confident that she could catch up to the 4 others. However, the time she had was just too limited. At this moment, a leaf drifted over the walls of the courtyard. Under the gentle breeze, it landed in Donglin Yanshue's hand in the end, perhaps out of coincidence. The leaf was extremely simple. There were plenty of leaves that had fallen off trees, so Donglin Yanshue did not think too much about it. She wanted to toss it away. But in the next moment, her eyes suddenly narrowed. She stared at the leaf with brimming interest. The veins on the verdant leaf interwove in an unnatural fashion, forming a small line of words. When the moon is full, meet me at Moon's Reflection Lake. I will assist you in becoming the chosen saint. Chapter 2256, The Meeting at Moon's Reflection Lake. Assist me in becoming the chosen saint? Who wrote this? What bold words! Donglin Yanshue frowned slightly when she looked at the tiny line of words formed by the veins of the leaf. This was a very ordinary leaf. Changing the veins on it was not difficult, so Donglin Yanshue was unable to determine the strength of the person who had sent this message to her. In the next moment, Donglin Yanshue expanded the senses of her soul in all directions. She wanted to find the person who had sent her this message. But to her disappointment, she found nothing even when she pushed the senses of her soul to the limit. Since this person is confident about assisting me to become the chosen saint, it must mean that they are extraordinary. But what I find strange is the fact that they haven't come to find me directly and told me face to face. Instead, he told me to go to the Moon's Reflection Lake through a method like this. Donglin Yanshue stared at the leaf and thought about it calmly. She gradually became suspicious, or maybe it's a scheme. They want to lure me to the Moon's Reflection Lake and do something to me? A sliver of coldness flashed through Donglin Yanshue's eyes when she thought of that. Although she was a woman, she was definitely not powerless. But in the next moment, Donglin Yanshue shook her head. She was a 9-star genius of the Radiant Saint Hall and one of the 5 candidates for becoming the chosen saint. Was there anyone who dared to lay their hands on her within the radiant Saint Hall? The night of the full moon. That's tonight. The moon's reflection lake. Let's go see this mysterious person and hope that they don't disappoint me, Donglin Yanshue murmured gently. The position of chosen saint was irresistible to her. Even if there was only a shred of a chance for her to become the chosen saint, she would never give up on it. Night descended, and the moon rose up in the sky. There was a huge lake surrounded by 8 mountains 10,000 kilometers away from the myriad flowers peak. Under the radiant moon in the sky, the huge lake immediately became illuminated. As far as the eye could see, the entire surface of the lake seemed to be covered by a thick layer of moonlight. It was a landscape of otherworldly beauty. This lake was known as the Moon's Reflection Lake, and it was one of the rather renowned places within the Radiant Saint Hall. At this moment, Jianchen sat calmly on a huge, dark rock on the shore in white robes that represented his identity as a Radiant Saint Master. He raised his head slightly, falling into a daze as he stared at the huge moon in the sky. So many years have passed already. I wonder how Fairy Hao Yu is doing. Her enemy, Nenpatian, has the Flame Reverend Grand Prime behind him. That's a supreme expert who moved against the Nnara Grand Prime, one of the 7 grand exalts of the Saints' world. I hope that Fairy Hao Yu doesn't do anything reckless. Jianchen could not help but think of Fairy Hao Yu who he had parted with many years ago as he looked at the bright moon. He became filled with worry. At this moment, a gentle ball of white light shot through the night sky and descended by the lake slowly. Afterwards, the white light dispersed and revealed a sacred beauty in a white dress. She was Donglin Yanshue. Donglin Yanshue was in her pure white clothes, and her feet did not touch the ground. She hovered an inch above the ground as she looked around before seeing Jianchen, who was several kilometers away. At this moment, Jianchen also looked away from the full moon and directed his gaze towards Donglin Yanshue. He brought his 2 fingers together, and a leaf that fell immediately landed between them. He waved it at Donglin Yanshue, who was several kilometers away. Donglin Yanshue's eyes narrowed. She could not help but study Jianchen properly before making her way over slowly. She basically approached Jianchen by flying along the ground. In the end, she drifted onto the rock that Jianchen sat on. She stood a few meters away from Jianchen. I originally thought that the person who told me to come here would be a radiant god king at the very least, or even an elder, or maybe an expert that had been sent in from those large clans and organizations. I never thought that it would be a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core. Donglin Yanshue stared at Jianchen closely as undisguised disappointment filled her eyes. Jianchen smiled indifferently. My cultivation doesn't matter because it's not important. What is important is that you understand that I can give you something even those elders or organizations can't give. I know you don't believe me. I also know there are many people richer than me, with more cultivation resources than me. However, can these people ensure you emerge victorious in the end? Donglin Yanshue was interested. A strange light flickered in her dark eyes as she stared at Jianchen in interest. She asked, I really do want to know just what a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core is relying on to be so confident. Jianchen smiled mysteriously. With a flip of his hand, a pure soul immediately appeared. The pure soul immediately gave off a pure and turbulent presence when it appeared, attracting both Jianchen's and Donglin Yanshue's attention. Just a single breath of the presence gave them the impression that their souls were rapidly strengthening. A pure soul? How did you get your hands on something like this? Donglin Yanshue cried out. She was unable to remain composed any longer before the pure soul. Shock and disbelief pervaded her beautiful face. Jianchen stowed the pure soul away and smiled. Do you believe that I have the ability now? Donglin Yanshue sucked in a deep breath and calmed herself down slowly. She looked at Jianchen with extremely mixed feelings as she said, Where did you get this pure soul from? Pure souls were extremely precious. Even with Donglin Yanshue's status in the Radiant Saint Hall, she had only managed to learn about them through records and from the elders. She did not even have the right to see one in person. However, Donglin Yanshue completely understood the usage of pure souls. Not only did it have great effects on fighters, but it was also a supreme treasure to Radiant Saint Masters. It was so precious that it was something rare even in the Radiant Saint Hall. Many elders did not even possess them. However, if she gained possession of this pure soul, her chances of becoming the chosen saint would greatly increase. Tell me, what do you want in exchange for the pure soul? Donglin Yanxue held back her excitement. Jian Chen stood up on the rock and said, every single chosen saint can personally select 9 people as their protectors. I want to be one of them. Of course, you know about the situation with my level of cultivation. Donglin Yanshue's gaze immediately became strange when heard that. She said, your final objective in going as far as to give me a pure soul so that I can become the chosen saint is only so that you can become one of my 9 retainers? Donglin Yanshue's gaze towards Jianchen became extremely strange. She slowly took a step back and stared at Jianchen cautiously. She said rather coldly, what are your intentions? Let me just put it out there first. If you want to approach me like this and make me like you better give up on it. Jianchen was extremely dumbfounded by that. At that moment he only felt a headache. He was completely speechless. Chapter 2257. Wondrous Usage of the Soul. You've misunderstood. I have no interest in you, much less any presumptuous thoughts like that. I only want the position so that I can enter the Tower of Radiance, Jianchen explained with a bitter smile. Some of the cautiousness and contempt in Donglin Yanshue's eyes vanished. She asked, there's something that I don't understand. Out of the 5 candidates, why have you chosen me, instead of Gongjing Xian or Xin Bin, who are more likely to become the chosen saint? It's for a very simple reason. You're the weakest out of the 5 of them, so you should be the one who is the least likely to become the chosen saint. If I can assist you so that you become the chosen saint unexpectedly, you will have more gratitude towards me, and my trip into the Tower of Radiance will be even smoother. Of course, that's only one of the reasons. The main reason is that I've heard about the 5 of you from my teacher. I know some of your past. Although my knowledge is incomplete, I do understand the 5 of you roughly. The feeling you give me is that you're more reliable one compared to the 4 others, said Jianchen. Do you really just want to enter the Tower of Radiance, and there are no other reasons? Donglin Yanxue looked at Jianchen closely. Definitely. Very well then. I'll promise you. However, there are only 2 years until the selection, and Xin Bin and Gongjing Xin have both made it to the peak of the mid-4-colored soul core. They will break through at any time. If I want to defeat them, I need to reach late 4-colored soul core. Even though a pure soul is extremely precious and very effective, it's extremely difficult for me to break through the 2 realms in such a short amount of time, said Donglin Yanxue. Jianchen thought about it and said, you don't need to worry. Aside from the pure soul, I'll give you 1,000-leaf lotus. Anyway, since I've chosen you, I will assist you with my greatest ability when you contend for the position of chosen saint. Donglin Yanshue's eyes immediately lit up when she heard him mention the 1,000-leaf lotus. She said, the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak happens to have 1,000-leaf lotus. Gongjing Xian and Xin Bin have visited him time and time again in hopes of getting the 1,000-leaf lotus. But in the end, the Peak Lord bestowed the 1,000-leaf lotus to a Radiant Saint Master with a 1-colored soul core. Donglin Yanxue looked at Jianchen in a strange light and said, you should be Chang Yang, the person who defeated a 3-colored soul core Radiant Saint Master with a 1-colored soul core. Jianchen nodded in confirmation. Then he stowed the pure soul and 1,000-leaf lotus into a separate space ring and passed it to Donglin Yanxue. He said, if you have any other needs or difficulties during this time, you can find me. As long as I can help you, I will do everything I can. Jianchen ignored the prices he had to pay for Donglin Yanxue to become the chosen saint so that he could enter the Tower of Radiance. The desolate plain was already filled with experts. Even with Mo Tianyun's mask that prevented most of them from seeing through him, every single one of them was capable of many different methods. As a result, he needed to enter the Tower of Radiance as soon as possible to get his cultivation methods so that he could leave the desolate plain. After passing on the items, Jianchen left and returned to the soaring clouds plain. Donglin Yanxue remained on the rock. She held the space ring as she watched Jianchen leave. The light in her eyes flickered as she wondered, what is Chang Yang's background to be able to casually take out a pure soul that even the elders can't get their hands on? Or does he have no idea about the true usage of pure souls? In the next few days, Han Exine remained in seclusion to heal, so he did not summon the 3 disciples every morning. As a result, Jian Chen's life was extremely peaceful. He remained in his dwelling and rarely went out, cultivating daily. His junior sister, Bai Yu, had become a frequent guest of his. She basically went to Jian Chen's dwelling daily and would stay there for the whole day. She would go there in the morning and leave reluctantly after the sun had set. Naturally, Bai Yu went there for Jian Chen to teach her about the usage of Radiant Saint Force. Towards his junior sister, Jian Chen naturally did not hold back at all. He passed on all his understanding and method of usage regarding Radiant Saint Force to Bai Yu in great detail. He truly hoped that Bai Yu could become stronger. However, the end result was not favorable. No matter how Jian Chen demonstrated and explained, Bai Yu failed to grasp any of his almost perfect control and usage of Radiant Saint Force. Sigh. Why is it so difficult? I've tried countless times and it still doesn't work. Senior brother, can you explain to me how you achieve it so easily? Is there some other secret technique? Failing once again, Bai Yu gave up in dejection. Perhaps it has something to do with talent, said Jian Chen. Now, he was certain that his almost perfect control over Radiant Saint Force was not just because of how powerful his soul was. The strand of true chaotic force that had fused with his soul was the most important aspect. It was because of this chaotic force that his soul underwent some kind of transformation, making him possess a closer affinity towards Radiant Saint Force and various laws than any ordinary person. Junior sister, I better explain the laws of the Hallowed to you. I just happened to gain some new comprehension of the laws of the Hallowed when teacher invoked it for me. I hope it can help you, said Jian Chen before immediately explaining what he saw when he was comprehending the laws of the Hallowed and his understanding of the laws. The laws of the Hallowed was one of the 3,000 ways. It was a law of the world and extremely profound. It could not be explained clearly at all. The only way to grasp it was through personal comprehension. Jian Chen did not expect Bai Yu to comprehend the laws of the Hallowed in such a short amount of time. He only hoped that he could help Bai Yu gain an even clearer understanding of the laws of the Hallowed so that she could avoid some winding bends in the future. However, when Jian Chen explained his understanding of the laws of the Hallowed, he seemed to feel his soul gradually become flexible and unpredictable. The omnipresent laws of the Hallowed seemed to fuse with him, changing as he wished. At this moment, Jian Chen was thinking of building a foundation for Bai Yu to the best of his ability so as to pave a clear path for when she became a hallowed saint master in the future. In the end, he clearly felt the omnipresent laws of the Hallowed begin to break down slowly, presenting itself in the simplest form. It was exactly the same as when Han Exine personally invoked the laws of the Hallowed for Jian Chen, presenting the profound laws in the clearest fashion possible. This method had the same effect as an imprint to pass on laws. The only difference was that Han Exine needed to control his laws of the Hallowed to change slowly when he invoked them, while Jian Chen had completely achieved this through his will. According to what he wanted, the surrounding laws of the Hallowed automatically broke down, making it much simpler. Chapter 2258. Zhuo Feng's anger. If there was a hallowed saint master in Jian Chen's dwelling, they would discover in surprise that the laws of the Hallowed had actually become a lot simpler all of a sudden. Originally, Bai Yu did not pay too much attention to Jian Chen's explanation of the laws of the Hallowed. After all, Jian Chen only had a one-colored soul core, so how was it possible for his comprehension of the laws of the Hallowed to surpass their first senior brother, Zhuo Feng? But very soon she discovered that Jian Chen's voice seemed to boom out and resound in her head like a great bell. It made her mind shudder, causing her blurry understanding of the laws of the Hallowed to clear up gradually. Bai Yu seemed to grasp something. She could not help but close her eyes and sink into a deeper state of comprehension. At the same time, Jian Chen was secretly amazed. He had never thought that his soul would have an ability like this after it had fused with the strand of true chaotic force. At that moment, he felt like he was a monarch, able to command the laws of the world and make the laws of the hallowed change as he wished. At that moment, Jian Chen felt like his relationship with the laws of the hallowed was like a lord to his subject. However, Jian Chen had only become a hallowed saint master recently, so his comprehension of the laws of the hallowed remained at a rudimentary level. As a result, his control over the laws of the hallowed remained at the same rudimentary level. At the same time, Zhuo Feng carefully hid in an obscure bush outside of Jian Chen's dwelling with his presence concealed. He stared at Jian Chen's dwelling from afar. Junior sister has been getting closer and closer to Changyang these days. Not only does she go to his dwelling daily, but she even stays there for the whole day, and when she leaves, she's reluctant. Has their relationship really reached the point where they stick to each other like glue? Zhuo Feng thought with a sunken face and gritted teeth. He had always liked Bai Yu secretly. Now that he saw Bai Yu and Chang Yang's relationship had developed like this, he felt utterly furious. He had even lost his rationality several times. Zhuo Feng looked at the sky. Darkness had almost completely devoured the sky and gradually descended over the endless mountains in the surroundings as well. A huge moon rose up in the sky slowly. It's already so late. Why hasn't Junior sister come out yet? God damn it, what are they doing at such a late time? Zhuo Feng grew more and more flustered. His calmness was gradually devoured by the night as well. In the end, he could not resist anymore. He walked out of the bush furiously and directly destroyed the protective formation outside Jian Chen's dwelling. Jian Chen had been wholeheartedly explaining the laws of the hallowed to Bai Yu with all his concentration, but at this moment, a boom suddenly rang out. The formation outside immediately shattered, and the white-robed Zhuo Feng strode in from outside with a radiant sword in his hand. His face was sunken. The sudden occurrence made Jian Chen stop. As a result, the laws of the hallowed that permeated the dwelling immediately returned to their previous state, becoming profound once more. Bai Yu, who had been comprehending, was alarmed by the sudden boom as well. She was confused at first, but when she saw Zhuo Feng stride over with a radiant sword in his hand, she immediately understood everything. Immediately, anger sprang up from the bottom of Bai Yu's heart. She suddenly stood up and pointed at Zhuo Feng. For the first time, she said loudly and furiously, "First Senior, what are you doing? I clearly was about to comprehend the laws of the hallowed, but you've ruined all my efforts with the disturbance you've caused." Bai Yu was extremely irritated. She was furious. If she continued like that, it was extremely likely for her to break through and become a hallowed saint master. There were not many hallowed saint masters with two colored soul cores in the Radiant Saint Hall. Every single one of them was a prodigy among prodigies. Bai Yu became extremely furious when she saw Zhuo Feng suddenly get in her way when she was just about to gain such a great honor. She was unable to remain calm no matter what. Zhuo Feng sucked in a deep breath and forcefully calmed himself down as he stared at the angered Bai Yu. He said coldly and emotionlessly, "I just received news that the disciples of the Snowfall Peak have snuck into Second Junior's dwelling in an attempt to lay their hands on Second Junior. I was worried about Second Junior's safety, which is why I rushed over in a hurry." Zhuo Feng waved the radiant sword in his hand and said, "Look, I even condensed the radiant sword beforehand. I was ready to fight the people who snuck in here." Zhuo Feng was indeed prepared for a fight, but it was not against the disciples of the Snowfall Peak who had snuck in here. It was against Jian Chen. Once he discovered that Jian Chen held ill intentions towards Bai Yu, he would attack Jian Chen without any hesitation at all. Unfortunately, what he imagined did not happen. Moreover, it seemed like Bai Yu really was cultivating, so Zhuo Feng had no reason to attack Jian Chen. Although Jian Chen had defeated Wen Qing, Zhuo Feng refused to believe it. He thought it was an exaggerated rumor at most. After all, Jian Chen only had a one-colored soul core. "Junior sister, it's late. You should return first. I'll keep passing on my experiences to you tomorrow. Comprehending the laws of the hallowed isn't something you can do in a day. Today was just a good start for you. If you can keep going, I'm sure you'll succeed before long." Jian Chen also comforted Bai Yu in a timely manner. Bai Yu finally calmed down slightly from Jian Chen's words. She glanced at the sky and discovered that it was pitch black outside already. She bid farewell to Jian Chen and left. After Bai Yu had left, the radiant sword in Zhuo Feng's hand gradually dispersed. He looked at Jian Chen and said threateningly, "Chang Yang, you better keep your distance from junior sister. There's me for passing on the laws of the hallowed to you. It's not up to you, a mere radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core, to give fake guidance to junior sister." With that, Zhuo Feng swung his sleeve as he turned around and left directly. Jian Chen stood in the dwelling and looked at the simple formation that Zhuo Feng had destroyed. He mumbled softly, "I never thought that this Zhuo Feng would have murderous intent towards me." Jian Chen shook his head gently and made his way out of the dwelling. He cast down the formation again. He never took Zhuo Feng seriously. After doing all that, Jian Chen sat down in the dwelling again and thought back to what happened when he was passing on laws to Bai Yu. Since I can control the laws of the hallowed to break it down into a simpler form and present it in the clearest fashion possible, doesn't that mean I can use the same method to control the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction? At that moment, Jian Chen felt an urge to try it with the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction. If his guesses were correct, it basically meant that he could allow fighters who had comprehended the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction to comprehend their corresponding laws in the easiest manner possible. Jian Chen became elated at that thought. If his guesses were true, he would be able to make people weaker than him break through in the easiest way without wasting any heavenly resources at all. He could raise a great group of experts in the shortest amount of time possible. Unfortunately, this is the Radiant Saint Hall. Once I use the laws of destruction and the laws of the sword here, I can't be certain that I won't be discovered. As a result, I can't attempt it with any other laws besides the laws of the hallowed here. Chapter 2259. Guilty with wealth. The space within the Radiant Saint Hall that stood above the clouds was extremely large. It was like a miniature world. At this moment, a heavy stone door opened within the Radiant Saint Hall. A young man in white robes slowly made his way out with his hands behind his back. "Young Master Exen, you've emerged?" When the two guards in violet robes saw the young man, they immediately went up to receive him warmly. "Yeah," the young man referred to as young Master Exen nodded. Undisguised arrogance filled his face. He was one of the 5 candidates to become chosen saint, Gongjing Exen. "Gongjing Exen, you've emerged so soon. How has your comprehension of the spirit elation technique gone?" A voice rang out. A ruddy old man appeared before Gongjing Exen silently. 2 white-robed radiant saint masters appeared at basically the same time after the old man. As if they had teleported, they appeared silently from far away. One of them was a middle-aged man with a determined expression, while the other was an old woman who seemed to be in her 70s. Disciple Gongjing Exen greets Teacher Ma, Teacher Chen, and Teacher Mao. Gongjing Exen immediately began to show respect with the appearance of the 3 of them. This was because they had all surpassed the 7-colored soul core and condensed soul trees. Experts like that held the position of elder in the Radiant Saint Hall. They possessed great statuses. Every single 9-star genius within the Radiant Saint Hall would receive the personal guidance of elders. And right now, it just happened to be when the new chosen saint would be decided from the 5 9-star geniuses. As a result, the 5 candidates received special treatment, where they would have the guidance of at least a single elder at all times. The people who guided Gongjing Exen happened to be the 3 elders. "Teachers, I've already gained a rudimentary comprehension of the spirit elation technique," said Gongjing Exen. "Good. You really haven't disappointed us." Gongjing Exen, the day when the chosen saint is decided is getting closer and closer, so you can't afford to tarry at all now. You must cultivate with all your efforts and try to break through so that you can obtain the position and make us proud, one of the elders said sincerely. "Yes. I will do everything I can. I won't disappoint the teachers." Gongjing Exen clasped his fist. Afterwards, the 3 elders left together, leaving Gongjing Exen all by himself at the doorway. "Although I've reached the peak of the mid-4-colored soul core, it's just too difficult for me to break through in 2 years. I definitely won't be able to achieve it just by cultivating like normal," murmured Gongjing Exen. A cold light flickered through his eyes as he murmured to himself, "It's time for me to get that 1,000-leaf lotus. Once I have it, I'll definitely be able to break through in 2 years." Xian Bin should be emerging from seclusion soon as well. I have to be faster than him. I can't let him get the 1,000-leaf lotus. The next morning, Jian Chen was cultivating within his dwelling on the soaring cloud's peak. But at this moment, his formation began to twist, and a black-robed, middle-aged man directly passed through, entering the dwelling without any obstruction at all. Jian Chen stopped cultivating. He opened his eyes and stared at the uninvited middle-aged man calmly. He asked indifferently, "Who are you? Why have you barged into my dwelling without my permission?" The formation outside of Jian Chen's dwelling was of an extremely low grade, so it suited his status as a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core. However, the black-robed man had a cultivation equivalent to an overgod, so the formation was naturally useless against him. "You must be Chang Yang. You sure have managed to stay composed. However, you don't need to know who I am. I've only come to pass on a message for young Master Gongjing Exin. The young master wants you to state a price, and he'll buy the 1,000-leaf lotus from you." The man made his way before Jian Chen calmly and looked at the seated Jian Chen from above. "My 1,000-leaf lotus is not for sale," Jian Chen declined without any hesitation. The man frowned, and his voice became slightly gruff. "The 1,000-leaf lotus is of great use to young Master Gongjing Exin, and the young master also desires the 1,000-leaf lotus. What you're doing will only offend the young master. That's not a clever decision just for a 1,000-leaf lotus. Gongjing Xian needs it, but does that mean I have to sell it to him? Moreover, there are 5 candidates. It's too early to say who's going to become the future chosen saint," said Jian Chen. The man's face sank slightly. Immediately, he snorted coldly, "Chang Yang, you have no idea what's best for you. Offending young Master Gongjing Exin won't give you any benefit." Jian Chen remained seated on the ground, but he made his face twist in pain. He already knew that from the moment the black-robed man had stepped onto the soaring cloud's peak, the senses of Han Xian's soul had already been following him closely. "I wonder how Han Xian will deal with this matter," thought Jian Chen. However, just when he thought of that, the white-robed Han Xian suddenly appeared before Jian Chen. His face was sunken. He directly grabbed the black-robed man and tossed him out mercilessly. He said, "You've even come to the soaring cloud's peak to harass the disciples of my soaring cloud's peak? Do you really think it's that easy to set foot in my territory?" Han Xian was already a radiant god king, so the black-robed man was unable to resist at all. When he was thrown away by Han Xian, he directly collided with the formation outside Jian Chen's dwelling before falling to the ground in a ruffled shape. "Protector Han," the black-robed man scrambled to his feet. He looked at Han Xian, and his face immediately changed slightly. "Piss off. Without my permission, you are forbidden from setting foot in my territory," Han Xian said coldly. The black-robed man's face became ugly as he left silently. "Sir." At this moment, Jian Chen stood up and clasped his fist towards Han Xian. Han Xian looked back at Jian Chen, and the coldness on his face immediately melted away. It was replaced by concern. "Chang Yang, has he scared you?" "He hasn't. Fortunately, you made it in time, or who knows what would have happened," Jian Chen said with composure. Han Xian sighed gently from that. Now that the competition for the chosen saint is approaching, the 5 candidates will be doing everything they can to increase their strength. The 1,000-leaf lotus just happens to be able to bring evident effects to their cultivation, so they naturally won't give up on it. Han Xian looked at Jian Chen sternly and said, "According to my understanding of Gongjing Exin, he definitely won't give up on it. He'll definitely come again, and even Exin Bin will probably stick his nose into this matter. It's best if you find a way to get rid of your 1,000-leaf lotus appropriately. You can't offend the 9-star geniuses too much. Their future potential is far greater than mine." "Thank you for your concern, sir. I understand what to do." The black-robed man who had been thrown out by Han Xian stood before Gongjing Exin and reported Jian Chen's reply truthfully to Gongjing Exin. Gongjing Xian's face immediately sank from the black-robed man's explanation. He snorted coldly, This Changyang really has no idea what's best for him. Not only did he defy my orders within the ring, but he even dares to turn me down when I want to exchange with him. If it weren't for the rule that forbids the murders of fellow disciples in the Radiant Saint Hall, I definitely would not let him live. Gong Zhengexen looked at the black-robed man and said like he was giving an order, "Go to the Snowfall Peak and tell Wencheng to see me." Chapter 2260. A Reversal of Wrong and Right. Disciple Changyang of the Soaring Clouds Peak, get your *SS out here. Why won't you return what you owe to young Master Gong Zhengexen? The Soaring Clouds Peak was fated to not get any peace on this day. The black-robed man who Han Xian had thrown out returned to the region around the Soaring Clouds Peak a few hours later. However, he did not set foot in the territory of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Instead, he hovered high in the air, calling out loudly. His voice was extremely loud, like thunder. Not only did it boom across the entire Soaring Clouds Peak, causing the trees and grass on the mountain to shake, but it even reached a few neighboring mountains clearly. He did not try to keep quiet at all. With his cultivation akin to an overgod, he directly alarmed the peaks in the surroundings. Immediately, figures flickered among the mountains, and many Radiant Saint Masters looked over. The low-level formation that Jianchen had just cast down was naturally unable to cut off the sound. As a result, Jianchen was forcefully roused from cultivation. He really is persistent. Jianchen opened his eyes and made his way out of the dwelling with a frown. He stared at the figure in the sky from afar as a sliver of irritation appeared in his eyes. "Senior brother, what has happened? Why does that person say you owe Gong Zhengexen?" Bai Yu arrived before Jianchen using Radiant Saint Force and glanced at the black-robed man in the distance before asking Jianchen in doubt. "He has come for the 1,000-leaf lotus," Jianchen said indifferently. "Junior brother, what exactly do you owe Gong Zhengexen? You've actually made them come all the way to our mountain, shouting out loud. If this spreads, how will we, the disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak, still have the dignity to show ourselves before others?" The first senior brother, Zhuofeng, also made his way over. Before he had even arrived, his critical voice had already reached them. When he arrived before Jianchen, he glared at him as he lectured sternly, "Since you owe someone something, hurry up and return it to them. Isn't it embarrassing enough?" Jianchen glanced at Zhuofeng and scoffed, "Senior brother, the saint's world is filled with danger, and people scheme everywhere. You naturally don't know about these dangers since you haven't truly witnessed it all. When you truly make it out of the protective bubble around you and personally experience the weathering of the saint's world, you'll discover that this world isn't as peaceful as you thought it to be. However, at that time, it'll probably be too late for you. That's because many people will have already died by then. As a result, I want to use this matter to teach you a proper lesson, to make you truly understand the dangers of the world. Senior brother, you only need to stand to one side and watch." "Changyang, how dare you?" Zhuofeng's face became extremely sunken. He clearly understood that Jianchen was scorning him. In particular, Jianchen's disdainful attitude made Zhuofeng absolutely furious. He felt like his pride as the first senior brother was being challenged. Gong Zhengexen? Isn't he one of the 5 candidates for chosen saint? Changyang actually dares to borrow something from candidate Gong Zhengexen and not return it? Isn't he far too bold, Junior Changyang? Just what do you owe young Master Gong Zhengexen, Junior Changyang? Since you owe someone something, you better return it quick. You owe someone something, yet you don't return it. If this makes it out, not only will it be a stain to Junior Changyang's name, but even the name of the Soaring Clouds Peak will be affected. At this moment, Radiant Saint Masters flew over one after another from the nearby mountains. They all criticized Jianchen. Jianchen smiled indifferently. He directly looked at the black-robed man and said, "I really do want to know what exactly I owe to Gong Zhengexen." Jianchen's words immediately made the Radiant Saint Master in the surroundings stop talking. They all looked at the black-robed man. Immediately, the black-robed man sniggered coldly. He said loudly, "Back when you fought Wencheng on the sky-gazing peak, the Lord of the sky-gazing peak gave you 1,000-leaf lotus as a reward to the final victor. and you secretly asked for assistance from young Master Gongjing Xian to achieve victory, where you would give young Master Gongjing Xian the reward after you won. The black-robed man did not try to tone it down at all. As a result, every single word of his boomed out like thunder. It was no longer just the mountains near the sky-gazing peak. Even the disciples on mountains further away heard about the secret behind why Changyang was able to defeat an opponent far more powerful than him. Discussions sprang up. I never thought there would be another story to Changyang's glorious victory, so it was like that. Like I was saying, how can someone with a one-colored soul core defeat a radiant saint master with a three-colored soul core? No wonder Changyang fled in the end when I met him last time and wanted to spar with him. It looks like he's not as powerful as he's rumored to be, which is why he's not bold enough to accept. Quick, spread the news. Let everyone learn the truth. Changyang is a sham. Not only were the radiant saint masters around the soaring clouds peak discussing this, but similar discussions sprang up in the surrounding mountains as well. The news even reached the sky-gazing peak with astonishing speed before spreading out in all directions from there. Jian Chen's victory over a radiant saint master with a three-colored soul core had once shaken up the radiant saint hall, where basically everyone knew about it. If it were not for the sudden closure of the Radiant Saint Hall that shifted everyone's attention, the matter would probably continue to build up and even make it to the Sacred Hall in the end. However, when everyone thought they had learnt the truth, they were naturally astonished. It's not like that. It's not like that. Baiyu became temporarily flustered from everyone's conversations. She knew that if this really made its way out, her senior brother's reputation would be permanently damaged. Unfortunately, she felt very helpless against the rumors and gossip between the disciples. She was unable to explain it to them. On the other hand, Jian Chen remained completely composed. He did not care about this at all. He said calmly, "Do you have evidence?" The black-robed man sniggered coldly, "Evidence? Of course. Where's Wencheng?" Very soon, Wencheng flew over from the snowfall peak while surrounded by radiant saint force. His face was sunken, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. The second senior brother of the Snowfall Peak, Wencheng, has actually come. Senior Wencheng was directly involved. He would understand the situation back then the best. Let's see what Junior Wencheng has to say first. Many disciples discussed in the surroundings. Even a few of the more powerful disciples that had a three-colored soul core or greater became interested in the matter. Wencheng sneered from the bottom of his heart as he listened to the surrounding discussions. He already knew what he had to do, so as soon as he arrived, he stared at Jian Chen emotionlessly and growled, "Changyang, do you really think you can defeat me with your measly one-colored soul core? If it were not for young Master Gongjing Xian's message that day, forcing me to be defeated, do you still think you could have been victorious over me?" Chapter 2261. The radiant palm. Wencheng smiled coldly as he scoffed at Jian Chen, and I had felt very confused back in the ring that day. I didn't understand why young Master Gongjing Xian wanted me to lose to a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core. But now, I finally understand. As it turned out, you secretly pleaded for the young master to help you so that your name would become widespread in the Radiant Saint Hall, which would fulfill your vanity. And in return, you would offer the 1,000-leaf lotus you won from the fight to the young master. However, I never thought you were like this, Changyang. Because of young Master Gongjing Xian, I purposefully lost to you in the ring, allowing you to have the final victory. However, you decided to keep the 1,000-leaf lotus to yourself in the end, unwilling to complete your end of the deal. Changyang, does someone as depraved as you still have the dignity to remain in the Radiant Saint Hall? Wencheng's tone became vicious towards the end. He felt the sweet joy of revenge. He had agreed to all of this with Gongjing Xian beforehand. Gongjing Xian was willing to go as far as he needed to get the 1,000-leaf lotus and break through successfully in the remaining 2 years. However, Wencheng had always believed that his defeat to Jian Chen in the ring the other day was a permanent stain to his name. He had almost gone insane during the past few days, unwilling to see anyone at all. As a result, Wencheng agreed without any hesitation at all when Gongjing Xian sent people to find him and told him his plans. According to what he believed, not only were there no downsides to assisting Gong Zheng Xin in flipping the situation against Jian Chen and framing him, but he would even be able to redeem his shame and lost dignity through a valid excuse. The radiant Saint Masters who constantly gathered over became enlightened when they heard Wen Cheng's words. As they talked among themselves, their gazes towards Jian Chen all changed. The gazes were filled with disappointment, contempt, disdain, and even undisguised scorn. They did indeed look down on such actions. Wen Cheng, you're despicable. You're purposefully making the truth the complete opposite. It was nowhere like that the other day. Bai Yu yelled at Wen Cheng angrily from beside Jian Chen. Unfortunately, her words did not seem believable at all when the others heard them. I never thought my soaring cloud's peak would have such a shameless disciple. You've completely embarrassed us. Junior sister, don't spend any more time with someone like him. Zhuo Feng also stood to one side and criticized Jian Chen like he possessed seniority. He did not care about the reality of the matter. As long as there was an opportunity to humiliate Jian Chen, he would never miss it. He did not treat Jian Chen like his junior brother at all. Jian Chen's eyes turned cold from that. He knew Zhuo Feng held prejudice towards him. He did not care about it if no one was present, but now that so many disciples from other mountains were here, Zhuo Feng ignored the bigger picture and even wanted to make trouble for him, helping outsiders against him. This truly angered Jian Chen. Zhuo Feng, the one who has embarrassed the soaring cloud's peak is you know me. It looks like it's time for you to understand something, Jian Chen said to Zhuo Feng coldly. He formed a seal with his hand and directly pressed it towards Zhuo Feng. Immediately, powerful radiant saint force surged over and condensed into a meter-wide hand. It shone with dazzling light as it pressed towards Zhuo Feng. This is the radiant palm. Impossible. Zhuo Feng's eyes narrowed drastically as disbelief filled his face. He promptly tried to counterattack, condensing a radiant sword and swinging out with it. However, when his radiant sword landed on the radiant palm, it shattered to pieces, while the radiant palm continued without slowing, slamming into Zhuo Feng heavily. Zhuo Feng immediately grunted and staggered a few steps back. He would leave behind a deep footprint in the ground with each step. When he finally stabilized himself, his face darkened paled. He was both shocked and furious. That's the radiant palm. Heavens, he has actually grasped the radiant palm. The radiant palm is a radiant arte of an impressive grade. It said you need a 3-colored soul core at the very least to grasp it. What do you know? The radiant palm is far more profound than you've imagined it to be. Only a handful of people have managed to grasp the radiant palm with a 3-colored soul core. Most people truly gain a basic grasp with a 4-colored soul core. What? The radiant palm can only be grasped by people with 4-colored soul cores, yet Chang Yang has managed to cast it with just a 1-colored soul core. Heavens, this is astonishing. This is completely inconceivable. Not only did Jian Chen stun Bai Yu when he used the radiant palm, but even the radiant Saint Masters who had gathered over struggled to remain calm. They all cried out as they looked at Jian Chen like they were looking at a monster. As for Wen Cheng, his face had become terrifyingly sunken as resentment and envy filled his eyes. At this moment, he was forced to accept a brutal reality. In just a dozen or so days, Jian Chen's strength had increased drastically. At the very least, even Wen Cheng himself still had not truly grasped the radiant palm. Chang Yang really has not disappointed me. His talent truly is monstrous, having comprehended the radiant palm in such a short amount of time. I just wonder whether he has achieved a basic grasp over the other radiant arts I showed him. Han Exen smiled gladly on the top of the soaring cloud's peak. He was satisfied with his disciple. Jian Chen ignored the cries in the surroundings. He looked at Zhuo Feng coldly and said, Zhuo Feng, do you understand now? You may be the first senior brother of the soaring cloud's peak, but you don't have the capability to tell me what to do. You might not be able to defeat Wen Cheng, but that doesn't mean I can't. Afterwards, he no longer paid any more attention to Zhuo Feng's ugly expression. Instead, he looked towards Wen Cheng and sneered, Wen Cheng, it looks like the slap I gave you that day wasn't enough. Why don't we fight again in the ring so that everyone can see whether you actually forfeited purposefully last time or your strength was just lackluster? Though you got slapped because of your forfeit. That's quite the price to pay, Jianchen sniggered. Yeah, Wenqing. I still remember when your entire face was reduced to a mess by senior brother. You even fainted. Was that fake as well? Bai Yu followed up and said seriously. Wenqing's face paled in anger from that. Immediately, his anger turned against him and disturbed his inner flow of energy, causing blood to spray from his mouth. This matter had already left a permanent shadow in his heart. It was a vicious wound and the greatest humiliation in his life. He would not have the face to see anyone again. Now that it was mentioned again before everyone, he became extremely furious. Chang Yang, stop lying. Wenqing immediately lost his cool. His face warped as he bellowed at Jianchen. We'll know whether it's a lie or not when we fight again. Wenqing, are you willing to take me on in the ring again to prove your claims? Jianchen said leisurely. Chapter 2262, Donglin Yanshue's arrival. Wenqing's face immediately sank. Even though he was exasperated, he dared not agree to it. He became even less confident after Jianchen used the radiant palm. If he was defeated again and sent flying out of the ring with a slap, he really would no longer have the dignity to remain alive. Impressive. The two of you only need to fight again, and you'll be able to determine whether Wenqing lost purposefully or not. At this moment, a pleasant giggle rang out. A beautiful woman flew over from the distance, directly flying onto the soaring cloud's peak and arriving near Jianchen. It's Donglin Yanshue of the 5 candidates. Why has she come? The woman's arrival immediately led to cries in the surroundings. At that moment, everyone shifted their gazes from Wenqing and Jianchen to her. Many of the gazes were filled with infatuation and love. The arrival of Donglin Yanshue surprised Wenqing slightly as well. He looked at Donglin Yanshue's almost sacred beauty, and a sliver of well-hidden admiration appeared in the depths of his eyes as well. However, his face immediately became ashen when he thought about what she had just said. Why have you come? Jianchen looked at Donglin Yanshue and asked in surprise. Donglin Yanshue raised an eyebrow and said, What, your soaring cloud's peak does not welcome me? Jianchen smiled bitterly. How could we not welcome any of the 5 candidates? It's just that you really haven't come at a good time. Really? Donglin Yanshue smiled gently, but I feel like I've come at the perfect time. Bai Yu, who stood to one side, also became dumbfounded when she saw Jianchen interact with Donglin Yanshue so freely like he knew her already. Bai Yu struggled to imagine just how her senior Chang Yang was able to get to know one of the revered candidates, Donglin Yanshue. There were many people who were deeply infatuated with Donglin Yanshue among the disciples of other mountains. Their eyes had become filled with a vicious light, and they glared at Jianchen like tigers. There were various kinds of envy and jealousy within their gazes. Donglin Yanshue's arrival immediately made her the center of attention. She drew over the gazes of many powerful Radiant Saint Masters, where many of the Radiant Saint Masters with 4-colored, 5-colored, or even 6-colored soul cores set out and gathered over. All of these people had come for Donglin Yanshue. Junior Yanshue, why have you come? Junior Yanshue, how can you be standing on the soaring cloud's peak? With your status, the measly soaring cloud's peak does not match you at all. Why don't you come to our azure cloud's peak? Junior Yanshue, if you don't mind, you're welcome to come to our Thundercry peak. Our peak lord has already prepared wonderful alcohol. At that moment, all the Radiant Saint Masters with 4-colored soul cores or above extended their invitations to Donglin Yanshue. However, Jianchen immediately felt various cold gazes land on him from the Radiant Saint Masters in the surroundings. It made him smile bitterly inside. He really had no idea whether Donglin Yanshue's arrival was a curse or a blessing. Donglin Yanshue looked at Wenqing and said calmly, What do you think of the proposal I mentioned before? You and Chang Yang can spar again so that you can show whether your defeat last time was really due to Gongjing Xian's plans, or you were just not as powerful as Chang Yang. Wenqing, go fight with Chang Yang in the ring. Defeat him and show us you're telling the truth. In my opinion, the battle will probably be tough. Didn't you see Chang Yang use the radiant palm? Along with Donglin Yanshue's words, The people around the soaring clouds peak all began to call out. They wanted to make trouble. When Cheng's face became completely sunken, he stood there silently. Donglin Yanxue, why have you come? At this moment, a cold snort rang out. Gongjing Xian had also arrived. He was in his usual white robes. He hovered in the sky and stared at Donglin Yanxue and Jian Chen coldly. It's young Master Gongjing Xian. He has actually come as well. Heavens, I'm actually seeing young Master Gongjing Xian. The young master is so handsome. It's normally difficult to see any of the 5 candidates, but I'm seeing 2 of them right now. What's the special occasion? Gongjing Xian's arrival immediately led to another uproar in the surroundings. Many of the young, beautiful women ogled at Gongjing Xian with undisguised infatuation. A 9-star genius, one of the 5 candidates for chosen saint, with a handsome appearance and extraordinary bearing, Gongjing Xian had already become the Prince Charming in the hearts of many girls. They were tempted to throw themselves at him. What? Only you're allowed to come, and I'm not? Donglin Yanxue felt no fear towards Gongjing Xian since she was one of the 5 candidates as well, so she asked boldly. Donglin Yanxue, this has nothing to do you with. It's best that you leave, Gongjing Xian said indifferently. He caught sight of Jian Chen standing beside Donglin Yanxue. If she desired to meddle with his business, it was extremely likely that she could ruin it all. After all, with Donglin Yanxue's status, she completely possessed the right to ask the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak to make a statement and reveal the truth, something that Chang Yang could not achieve by himself. Before Donglin Yanxue could say anything, Gongjing Xian looked at Jian Chen with a threatening gaze and said condescendingly, Chang Yang, hand over the 1,000-leaf lotus, and I'll forget this happened in the first place. Donglin Yanxue smiled mysteriously when she heard that. With a flip of her hand, she took out something from her space ring and said to Gongjing Xian, are you talking about this? Unsurprisingly, she was holding the 1,000-leaf lotus Jian Chen had given her. The appearance of the heavenly resource immediately made Gongjing Xian's face change slightly. He stared right at the lotus in Donglin Yanxue's hand and growled, why is it with you? I obviously gave it to Senior Yanxue. Gongjing Xian, is there a problem with that? Jian Chen directly called him by his name and showed no respect at all. However, the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak rewarded me with the 1,000-leaf lotus, so I naturally have the right to give it to whoever I want. If I don't want to give it to you, you won't be able to take it from me even if you use your schemes. Jian Chen looked straight at Gongjing Xian and completely ignored the latter's status as one of the candidates. He said, Gongjing Xian, you might be one of the candidates for chosen saint, but a candidate is still just a candidate in the end. Others might step aside for the sake of you in the Radiant Saint Hall, but if you don't know when to stop and keep pressuring people, you'll only make trouble for yourself. Jian Chen's words stunned everyone present. He had completely and utterly offended Gongjing Xian with that. Chapter 2263. Settling down. A mere Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core was getting in the way of a candidate before everyone. Many people secretly admired his courage, causing them to hold Jian Chen in a new light. However, there were also others that looked at Jian Chen in delight when they thought about what he would suffer in the future. His days would be numbered after offending a chosen saint candidate. Chang Yang, you're very impressive. I will remember everything you've said. Gongjing Xian's face was terrifyingly sunken. He stressed each word as killing intent filled his eyes. Senior Yanxue, this Gongjing Xian has been collaborating with Wencheng to use the battle that day to slander me. He wanted to get the 1,000-leaf lotus that the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak gave me. There's probably no one apart from the Peak Lord who can produce powerful evidence to prove this matter and redeem my innocence. However, seeing the Peak Lord is basically impossible with my status, so I can only ask Senior Yanxue to visit the Peak Lord for me, and then announce the outcome of the visit and let everyone know whether I actually used Gongjing Xian's help to defeat Wencheng and obtain this reward, Jian Chen said to Donglin Yanxue. He did not try to tone it down at all, allowing his voice to spread afar. Donglin Yanxue giggled. She glanced at Jian Chen deeply and said, I will naturally help you for the sake of the 1,000-leaf lotus and prove that you're innocent. All right, very impressive, Gongjing Xian's face darkened in anger. He glared at Jianchen with gritted teeth before turning around and leaving. He knew that as long as Donglin Yanxue stood with Jianchen, he would be unable to do anything to Jianchen. Moreover, Jianchen did not seem to revere him like the other disciples, so remaining any longer was pointless. With Gongjing Xian's departure, Wen Cheng and the black-robed man naturally did not linger. They said nothing and fled from the soaring cloud's peak in a hurry. At the same time, on a distant mountain, Exin Bin, also one of the candidates, stood with his arms behind his back. He observed what happened from afar. I never thought Chang Yang would actually give the 1,000-leaf lotus to Donglin Yanxue. Since it has ended up in her hands, it's basically impossible for me to get it. But that should be for the better. Donglin Yanxue is the weakest. Even with the 1,000-leaf lotus, it won't bring a huge advantage towards her candidacy for chosen saint. As long as Gongjing Xian and Shirda don't get it, it won't be able to influence much. Exin Bin murmured to himself. He was rather satisfied with this outcome. Then he left the mountain peak with radiant saint force. The matter raised by the 1,000-leaf lotus came to an end. All the more powerful radiant saint masters of the various peaks extended their invitation towards Donglin Yanxue again. The soaring cloud's peak became extremely busy during this time. However, Donglin Yanxue declined all of the warm invitations without any hesitation. Half an hour later, all the radiant saint masters gathered on the soaring cloud's peak returned to their own mountains. The busy soaring cloud's peak finally recovered its usual peace. Senior Chang Yang, how do you know Senior Yanxue? Why haven't I heard you mention it before? As soon as the soaring cloud's peak settled down, Baiyu arrived beside Jianchen and grabbed his hand affectionately and asked. On the other hand, Zhuo Feng stood in the distance silently with a sunken face. He glanced at Donglin Yanxue and Jianchen as the flames of envy smoldered within the depths of his eyes. God damn it! How does Chang Yang know Senior Yanxue? How is it possible for them to know each other? Zhuo Feng thought as he gritted teeth. He liked Baiyu, while Donglin Yanxue was someone like a goddess to him. She was an existence he could only look up to and never stand on equal grounds with. Yet this exact same goddess was actually acquainted with Jianchen and even stood forward to speak for Jianchen even if it meant offending Gongjing Xin. It was not a great feeling for Zhuo Feng. Junior sister, I'll explain to you later. I have something to discuss with Senior Yanxue, so you should go back first, Jianchen said to Baiyu. Baiyu immediately wrinkled her nose in displeasure and snorted gently, Senior brother, don't you have to pass on your comprehension of the laws of the hallowed to me? And you need to teach me the radiant palm as well. All right. I'll teach you another day. It's just that I really am busy right now, Jianchen smiled. He had truly accepted Baiyu inside, treating her as his younger sister. He showered her with care. Senior Chang Yang, remember that's what you said? I'll come to find you tomorrow. You have to help me with all you have. Baiyu glanced at Donglin Yanxue before leaving alone. As for Zhuo Feng, he naturally needed no reminder from Jianchen. After Baiyu had left, he glanced at Donglin Yanxue, who remained there, with mixed feelings. He walked off into the distance with disorderly thoughts. However, he did not go too far away. He stopped at a certain distance away from Jianchen's dwelling, hiding there secretly to observe the dwelling. Or more correctly, he was observing Jianchen and Donglin Yanxue's relationship. Chang Yang, it looks like your senior really does care about you, Donglin Yanxue said mysteriously. Clearly, she had noticed that Zhuo Feng was spying on them. Jianchen shook his head as he gave a bitter smile. He did not try to explain Zhuo Feng's behavior. Tell me. You've come all the way from the Myriad Flowers Peak. What do you need from me? Donglin Yanxue glanced at Jianchen deeply and said, I heard you have quite the achievement in the usage and grasp over Radiant Saint Force. I've come to find you for this. You wish me to teach you the method of using Radiant Saint Force? Jianchen looked at Donglin Yanxue in some surprise. Donglin Yanxue shook her head gently and corrected him, it's not teach but to discuss and share. Jianchen nodded understandingly. He smiled, not everyone can grasp my method. It'll probably be very difficult to benefit from me. How is it impossible for me to do something that even you with your one-colored soul core can achieve? Donglin Yanxue replied with a question. All right then. Let's do it. However, before all this, I still need you to go to the sky-gazing peak and get some evidence regarding the thousand-leaf lotus. I think the Peak Lord will see you with your status as a candidate. Donglin Yanxue was mildly surprised by that. She looked at Jianchen seriously and asked, You're serious? Of course I'm serious. Gongjing Xan has come for me time and time again. If I don't counterattack, he'll think I'm just an easy target. This time, I will definitely humiliate Gongjing Xan with the evidence. Jianchen's face sank, and a vicious light flickered through his eyes. Donglin Yanshue's face hardened. She carefully studied Jianchen's ordinary face that he had created from the mask as if she had just met him. A while later, Donglin Yanshue nodded solemnly. She said sternly, All right, I'll go to the sky-gazing peak right now. However, I hope you can consider the consequences clearly. The people behind Gongjing Xen are not as simple as those behind Wencheng. With that, Donglin Yanshue directly made her way towards the sky-gazing peak. Chapter 2264. Mutual exchanges. Very soon, Donglin Yanshue returned. She came back with a crystal that recorded her conversation with the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak. Take it. I've gotten what you want. Donglin Yanshue passed the crystal to Jianchen and continued. It looks like even the Peak Lord takes displeasure in some of Gongjing Xian's actions. When I asked the Peak Lord about the thousand-leaf lotus, he clearly knew I was recording it, but he did not stop me. As a result, getting the evidence was extremely easy. Jianchen accepted the crystal and immediately sent the senses of his soul inside. Donglin Yanshue and the Peak Lord promptly appeared before him along with their voices. Jianchen heard their conversation clearly. Disciple Changyang of the Soaring Clouds Peak only had a one-colored soul core, but I became utterly amazed and lost in wonder by his usage of Radiant Saint Force. After he defeated Wencheng, who had a far greater cultivation, I bestowed my thousand-leaf lotus to Changyang on a whim. Peak Lord, was the thousand-leaf lotus not a reward prepared for the victor? Of course not. I only bestowed it to Changyang on a whim. The few lines from the Peak Lord completely separated the matter of the thousand-leaf lotus from Gongjing Xen. Jianchen's senses of his soul receded from the crystal. He clutched it tightly as he gradually revealed a sneer. He wanted to see how Gongjing Xian would respond once the contents of the crystal were made public. Gongjing Xen, I definitely won't be giving you a way out of this time, thought Jianchen. I've helped you already, so shouldn't you consider my matters now? Donglin Yanshue said. Jianchen nodded. With a flip of his hand, the crystal vanished. He casually glanced at where Zhuofeng hid before making a gesture to invite Donglin Yanshue into his dwelling. Then he made his way into his dwelling. Donglin Yanshue immediately became stunned when she saw Jianchen enter his dwelling. A gleam of light flickered in her eyes as she hesitated. But in the end, she made up her mind and entered Jianchen's dwelling. Senior Yanshue has actually entered Changyang's dwelling. How is this possible? Zhuofeng became completely dumbfounded when he clearly witnessed this from afar. He was about to explode with envy. What's so good about Changyang? It was Junior Baiyu first, and now Senior Yanshue. Senior Yanshue is like a resplendent pearl of the Radiant Saint Hall in particular. Damn it, Zhuofeng's face was twisted. He could accept Baiyu, but Donglin Yanshue of all people as well? She was someone he treated like a goddess, sacred and inviolable. In the end, his goddess was actually completely unfazed and entered Jianchen's dwelling, which drove him mad. Zhuofeng even wished to become Jianchen at that moment. Jianchen and Donglin Yanshue sat before each other in Jianchen's simple dwelling. A cluster of radiant saint force shone with gently white light as it leapt about like a little wisp on the tip of his finger. Radiant saint force is just like a limb of mine, my body, or even a part of my soul. As long as it exists in the surroundings, I'm able to create a wondrous connection with it and control it, making it change to my will. Pay close attention. Jianchen was both concentrated and serious. The radiant saint force seemed to be alive in his hands, constantly changing between various forms. It moved as he wished. With a thought, it turned into a radiant sword, but in the next moment, it turned into a radiant shield. Everything happened smoothly. His control over Radiant Saint Force seemed limitless. Donglin Yanxue paid close attention as she concentrated on Jian Chen's actions. She would close her eyes to comprehend it at times, or control Radiant Saint Force to experiment around with it at other times. In the end, Donglin Yanxue had to admit that although she was much more powerful than Jian Chen in terms of cultivation, she was nowhere close to his grasp and almost perfect usage of Radiant Saint Force. Donglin Yanxue did not even gain a rudimentary grasp over it after so many attempts. However, Donglin Yanxue did not become dejected. She was not afraid of failure. She constantly tried and confirmed or disproved her thoughts. In the end, she used her talent to slowly discover this new method of use. Although it was nowhere close to Jian Chen's, her usage over Radiant Saint Force did reach a whole new level. Enchanted, Donglin Yanxue completely submerged herself in the entire process. She forgot about time and would ask Jian Chen to confirm her thoughts and discuss their experiences frequently to make up for her mistakes. Gradually, the new method of control that she had discovered approached perfection. As for Jian Chen, he managed to benefit from Donglin Yanxue as well. Through their conversations, he managed to come in contact with a higher level of the laws of the hallowed. Moreover, he gained a rough understanding of the four-colored soul core from Donglin Yanxue. It could be said that both of them managed to benefit from this exchange. Unknowingly, half a month had already passed since Donglin Yanxue entered Jian Chen's dwelling. During this period of time, the rumors regarding Chang Yang and Donglin Yanxue had caused quite the buzz in the Radiant Saint Hall. Everyone knew about it. At first, it was the truth as to why Chang Yang could defeat Wen Cheng as well as his non-existent agreement with Gong Zheng Xin. It had spread to most of the mountains through word of mouth, causing all the disciples to feel contempt for Jian Chen. But very soon, this news was replaced by how Donglin Yanxue had spent a long time in Chang Yang's dwelling. All the Radiant Saint Masters within the Radiant Saint Hall guessed at their relationship. Rumors sprang up everywhere during this time. At the same time, all of the powerful Radiant Saint Masters who adored Donglin Yanxue were angered. Many of them gathered on the Soaring Clouds Peak, forcing the Lord of the Peak, Han Xin, to personally come out and seal up the mountain, forbidding anyone from setting foot there. However, there were many disciples and descendants of elders among them. Han Xin felt greatly pressured when they worked together against him. Only when Donglin Qiushue, the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak, one of the 99 main peaks, arrived did these Radiant Saint Masters of great status settle down. Half a month later, Donglin Yanxue finally emerged from Jian Chen's dwelling, but as soon as she made her way out, she became dumbfounded. The protective formation of the Soaring Clouds Peak had already been activated. Many Radiant Saint Masters gathered in the air, blocked out by the formation. On the Soaring Clouds Peak, near Jian Chen's dwelling, Han Xian and Donglin Qiushue stood beside each other as they stared at Donglin Yanxue. "Auntie, why have you come?" Donglin Yanxue saw Donglin Qiushue, and her expression immediately became rather unnatural when she thought about how long Donglin Qiushue had been waiting, along with the fact that she had spent half a month in Chang Yang's dwelling. "Look at you. You don't even pay any attention to the mess you can create. If I didn't come, would you have been able to cultivate for half a month in peace?" Donglin Yanxue shot a glance at Donglin Yanxue with a fake sense of irritation and rebuked her. "But I need to say that you really haven't come here for nothing. Although that kid called Chang Yang's cultivation is nothing special, his understanding of Radiant Saint Force is peculiar. You've managed to benefit quite a lot by exchanging experiences with him," continued Donglin Qiushue. "Auntie, you know? If I didn't know what you were doing inside, why would I ever let you stay in a man's dwelling for so long? I would have dragged you out long ago." "Let's go," Donglin Yanxue said in frustration. She did not let Donglin Yanxue respond, directly pulling her away. Chapter 2265. A brewing storm. Now that the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak had personally come to take Donglin Yanxue away, none of the powerful radiant saint masters gathered outside the soaring clouds peak dared to stand in their way. Quite a few of them even looked at Donglin Qiushue with dread. However, the radiant saint masters felt no fear toward the soaring clouds peak. After Donglin Qiushue and Donglin Yanxue had left, many of the radiant saint masters immediately shifted their gazes towards Jianqin. Their eyes were filled with coldness and hostility. Changyang, it's best if you maintain a certain distance from Donglin Yanxue. Donglin Yanshue's identity is not simple. She's a direct descendant of the Donglin clan. The difference between your statuses is just too great, and there are many people who are pursuing her. Anyone who's bold enough to do that will definitely possess an astonishing background. If you get too close to her, it'll be detrimental to you. Han Xian made his way over to Jian Chen's side and said sincerely, "I understand. Thank you for your reminder, sir." Jian Chen clasped his fist towards Han Xian. After watching Han Xian leave, he returned to his dwelling. Due to the soaring clouds peak being sealed off, none of the radiant saint masters gathered outside the mountain managed to set foot there. However, Han Xian's actions naturally offended many people. He displeased many powerful radiant saint masters. What haughtiness! The Lord of the soaring clouds peak actually dares to shut the door on us. This Han Xian seems to be from the Han family of the eastern region. He's only a nameless member of the Han family. There might not be a lot of people in the Han family who even know about his existence. The radiant saint masters all dispersed as they discussed. Before long, the soaring clouds peak had regained its peace. Afterwards, Jian Chen entered a long period of seclusion. Apart from going to the mountaintop to listen to Han Xian's lessons of passing on the laws of the hallowed, he spent the rest of his time in his dwelling cultivating. He had benefited quite a lot from his interaction with Donglin Yanxue. It allowed him to gain a new understanding of radiant saint force. He needed time to tidy through it all. Baiyu remained the same as before, basically coming to Jian Chen's dwelling every single day to hear about Jian Chen's comprehension of the laws of the hallowed. Jian Chen, on the other hand, slowed down. He would only spend an hour a day explaining his comprehension of the laws of the hallowed, but even with that being the case, Baiyu would spend several hours comprehending after each session. As a result, in just half a month, Baiyu finally broke through in her dwelling on a night with the full moon. She successfully comprehended the laws of the hallowed with her two-colored soul core, becoming a hallowed saint master. Not only did Baiyu's breakthrough alarm Han Xian, but it also alarmed the sacred hall. On the next day, an elder arrived on the soaring clouds peak, taking Baiyu into the sacred hall to cultivate. At the same time, the matter spread across the entire Radiant Saint Hall, making all the disciples remember Baiyu's name. Although there were people who became hallowed saint masters with just a two-colored soul core in the Radiant Saint Hall, they were almost mythical existences. Every single one of them would receive much support from the Radiant Saint Hall, where they would become the elites among the elites. As a matter of fact, without any exaggeration, once someone became a hallowed saint master with a two-colored soul core, their status in the Radiant Saint Hall would almost be able to rival the 5 candidates. After Baiyu entered the sacred hall, Zhuo Feng became completely downhearted. He had liked Baiyu since a long time ago, and he was confident about making her fall in love with him. Not only was he a radiant saint master with a 3-colored soul core, but he was also a 5-star genius. He experienced a natural sense of supremacy over Baiyu, who was only a 1-star genius. However, all of this changed when Baiyu comprehended the laws of the hallowed and was personally taken into the sacred hall by an elder. Right when Baiyu's matter settled down, Jian Chen finally took action as well. He made many copies of the conversation between Donglin Yanxue and the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak before silently spreading them around. Basically, all the Radiant Saint Masters believed that Jian Chen had only managed to beat Wenqing because of Gongzheng Xian's secret arrangements. That way, he could become the final victor and make a name for himself. In exchange, he would give the 1,000-leaf lotus he won to Gongzheng Xian. However, after Jian Chen was victorious, he broke off his end of the secret deal he had established with Gongzheng Xian, giving the 1,000-leaf lotus to Donglin Yanxue instead. As a result, not only did he closen his relationship with her, but he even gained her protection, where Gongzheng Xian could do nothing to him. Because of this, Jian Chen had a very poor reputation in the Radiant Saint Hall. Basically, everyone would talk about Chang Yang in disdain and scorn. It destroyed Jian Chen's reputation. Now that the contents of the crystal were made public, the truth that was the exact opposite of what everyone believed naturally spread without any attempts to suppress it. It immediately led to quite an uproar, where even a few more powerful Radiant Saint Masters began to pay attention to this matter. If it was only a matter between two weaker Radiant Saint Masters, it would not have caused such a disturbance. More importantly, it directly pulled an esteemed candidate into the matter as well. Just when Gongzheng Xian was about to enter seclusion for the final spurt, he received the news as well. His face immediately became extremely ugly as heavy killing intent filled his eyes. Pay close attention to Chang Yang. Once he leaves the Radiant Saint Hall, immediately contact the people in the clan to get rid of him, Gongzheng Xian said frigidly. Yes, young master. I will contact the clan immediately, a violet-robed guard said politely from behind Gongzheng Xian. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. During that time, Jian Chen did not take a single step away from the soaring cloud's peak. He remained holed up there, basically spending all his time on cultivation. As Bai Yu could not interrupt him anymore, Jian Chen finally gained some peace. On this day, Jian Chen suddenly roused from his cultivation. He looked at the sky before making his way out of his dwelling. He stared at the distant horizon. A gate had suddenly appeared in the protective formation around the Radiant Saint Hall in the distance, and afterwards, a figure directly entered the territory of the Radiant Saint Hall. The figure gave off an astonishing presence, enough to make the mountains tremble as all the vegetation was squashed down as if they were bowing in submission. The person strolled through the air and crossed a huge distance in a single instance. In just a single step, he arrived within the Radiant Saint Hall that stood above the clouds. Jian Chen became stern when he saw this person. He felt an ill omen. It seemed like this person's arrival was related to him. At this moment, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall with supreme authority and the 8 vice leaders were all gathered within a grand discussion room on the highest floor of the sacred hall. They were all stern. A gray-robed, middle-aged man stood with his hands behind his back in the center of the room. He looked at the leader of the Radiant Saint Master who sat on a throne with great composure. I've only come to pass on a thought that we've all agreed on over there. We hope your Radiant Saint Hall can open its gates and allow us to search as we wish, unlike before, locking the door in our face, the gray-robed man said. That will be impossible. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall shone with holy light as he declined without any hesitation at all. The man smiled indifferently. Leader, I think you also know that our actions are only to find Jian Chen. We will never do anything that gets in the way of the interests of your Radiant Saint Palace. You must cooperate. In reality, it's not just your Radiant Saint Hall. We've even sent people to all the other peak organizations on the desolate plain so that they can open their gates and allow us to find Jian Chen. Jian Chen possesses the Aneta Tower, which belongs to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. Our actions are actually only a service to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, to share the burden with Her Majesty Exin. If you don't cooperate, wouldn't that be making things difficult for Her Majesty Exin? The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall could not help but become stern when Exin was mentioned. The First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing was in existence only second to Grand Primes, one of the handful of supreme experts of the Saints' world. Her name had a huge influence on the peak organizations across the Saints' world. Our Radiant Saint Hall represents Radiant Saint Masters. As a fighter, Jian Chen could be hiding anywhere on the desolate plain but not our Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, it's impossible for him to be here, the leader said sternly. Jian Chen is far more complicated than you've imagined him to be. So many of us, peak experts, have tried to detect his traces and whereabouts through various secret techniques, but we've found nothing in the end. He has such impressive means of staying hidden that even if he did hide in your territory, you would not be able to find him. Now, we've basically flipped through the entire desolate plain. Apart from the peak clans on the desolate plain, we haven't missed a single corner. We all have people stationed in outer space and the teleportation formations across planes on the desolate plane as well. As a result, it's impossible for Jianqin to escape. We can already determine that Jianqin is hiding in a peak organization. The gray-robed man stared at the leader with shining eyes as he waited for the leader's reply. After a moment of thought, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall said with a heavy heart, "Since it's serving the heavenly palace of Bixing, our Radiant Saint Hall will obviously be more than willing." Chapter 2266. Quite the disturbance. If that's the case, thank you for your cooperation. Farewell. The gray-robed man clasped his fist and left. These people have gone too far. Do they really think they're sovereigns of the world, where they can act as they wish on the desolate plain? The desolate plain is our territory, yet we're supposed to let these outsiders run around fearless and basically upheave the entire plain. It's humiliating as a native organization of the desolate plain. And even worse, they actually want us to open our doors and let them search as they wish. What kind of place do they think the Radiant Saint Hall is? Although our Radiant Saint Hall has declined, we're still a peak organization that had a grand exalt in the past. How can we listen to the orders of those outsiders? Those outsiders will stop at nothing. The 8 vice leaders all snarled with righteous indignation after the gray-robed man had left. All of their expressions were horrible and utterly sunken. Sigh. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall exhaled gently. His voice was filled with powerlessness. He said steadily, "These outsiders have come under the name of the Heavenly Palace of Bixing. Let alone our Radiant Saint Hall, but there's probably no one from the other major organizations on the desolate plain who are bold enough to turn them down. Even without considering offending the Heavenly Palace of Bixing when you reject them, they'll start believing you're purposefully protecting Jianqin. Some of them with ulterior motives will even label you as wanting to take the Enata Tower all for yourself. Once that happens, the consequences will be far worse. Deactivate the protective formation and let the outsiders search our Radiant Saint Hall. However, we can't let them act as they wish. As a result, including me, no one is to enter seclusion. At the same time, have all the elders pay close attention to the outsiders. Once they cross the line in our Radiant Saint Hall, immediately punish them according to our rules. We can let them in and look for Jianqin, but we cannot let them act recklessly." "Yes, leader," replied the 8 vice leaders. After a moment of thought, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall continued, "The 3 great treasures of the Enata Grand Exalt are the Heavenly Palace of Bixing, the Enata Tower, and the Fortune Jade Pedestal. Since the Enata Tower is with Jianqin, once an organization finds Jianqin, they'll obtain the Enata Tower, and then they'll offer it up to the Heavenly Palace of Bixing. This will be a great merit. At the same time, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our Radiant Saint Hall as well." The leader continued, "In all these years, it has been far, far too long since we've had any late God King disciples due to that mysterious expert. As a result, the lords of various peaks who could break through were all forced to suppress their cultivation to mid-God King. Even the disciples who were unable to suppress their cultivation were forced to leave the Radiant Saint Hall in the end, hiding away all by themselves. Moreover, not a single one of them have returned so far. Who knows whether they're still alive or not? If this lasts over a prolonged period of time, our Radiant Saint Hall will definitely wane in strength. As a result, we must search for the Enata Tower with all of our efforts as well. If we can find it first, we won't have any need to fear that mysterious expert anymore." The eyes of the 8 vice leaders all lit up from that. They said, "That's right. Once we obtain the Enata Tower, we'll be able to ask the First Majesty to take action personally and kill that mysterious expert." The First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bixing is one of the most terrifying figures in the world. Back then, the Flame Reverend Grand Prime, who was also known as one of the most powerful below Grand Exalt, had fled across the entire Saints' world while being hunted down by the First Majesty. In the end, he was forced to hide. That mysterious expert who has been specifically targeting our Radiant God Kings may be very powerful, but can he be more powerful than the Flame Reverend Grand Prime? This might be an opportunity for our Radiant Saint Hall. Leader, it's best if I personally head out and see if I can find Jian Chen's traces. I want to search for Jian Chen as well. After all, he has a direct correlation with our Radiant Saint Hall's fate. Two vice leaders immediately asked for permission to search for Jian Chen. Even though all of them knew it would not be easy to find Jian Chen since he could avoid so many peak experts of the Saints' world, they still could not help but want to try their luck. On that day, all the protective formations around the Radiant Saint Hall vanished, exposing every inch of the place to the public. Without the formations, the powerful senses of the outsiders' souls immediately came sweeping in. They enveloped the entire Radiant Saint Hall with great pressure, without missing a single corner at all. They scoured all the mountains of the Radiant Saint Hall. Even the secret rooms deep underground were not missed. On that day, basically no disciples of the Radiant Saint Hall ventured out. Under the restraints of their peak lords, they all stayed on their respective mountains. They could feel the powerful senses moving across them, immediately causing many of the Radiant Saint Masters who had no idea what was going on to tremble in fear and unease. Jian Chen sat on a rock outside his dwelling. He also clearly sensed the powerful senses sweep past him, causing his heart to grow heavy. Now that the Radiant Saint Hall had opened its gates to outsiders, Jian Chen truly felt endangered. Fortunately, I have Senior Mo Tianyun's mask. As long as I have it, I don't have to worry about being exposed by the senses of those experts. Even if they were standing before me, they probably would not be able to tell what my true appearance was. But there is nothing perfect in the world, so if they filter through the people one by one, they'll discover problems with me sooner or later. I will be exposed one day. My main intentions of coming to the Radiant Saint Hall is to enter the Tower of Radiance and obtain the cultivation methods left behind by past experts. As a result, I cannot leave here before I enter the Tower of Radiance, or it would have all been for nothing, thought Jian Chen. He knew that he only had one chance to enter the Tower of Radiance. Once his identity was exposed, it would become impossible to hide his martial soul force as well. He would immediately become an enemy of the Radiant Saint Hall, making it impossible for him to enter the Radiant Saint Hall. Deactivate the formation. All disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak will be inspected. At this moment, someone called out coldly from beyond the Soaring Clouds Peak. Two violet-robed guards and a few outsiders arrived near the Soaring Clouds Peak, hovering in the sky silently. Jian Chen looked at the people from his rock. Even though he maintained a facade and only appeared slightly confused, his heart grew heavier. Zhuofeng Changyang, come to me. At this moment, Han Xian's voice rang out from the top of the mountain. Afterwards, the formation around the Soaring Clouds Peak gradually vanished as well. Jian Chen immediately stood up from the rock and flew towards the top of the mountain. Very soon he arrived on the mountain top. He discovered that Han Xian was conversing with the two violet-robed guards, while Zhuofeng was already standing behind Han Xian. Under the orders of the leader of our sacred hall, all disciples, including the peak lords, must be inspected, a guard said to Han Xian. Han Xian nodded. I've already received the message from the elders. We will definitely cooperate. The violet-robed guard nodded before taking out a mirror and directing it at Han Xian. Immediately, a resplendent stream of light shot out and enveloped Han Xian completely. The mirror was extraordinary. It could pierce through illusions and reveal the truth. Through it, all disguises would be rendered useless. Jian Chen could clearly sense that the powerful senses of the soul gathered in the air of the Radiant Saint Hall were all gathered on the mirror when the light enveloped Han Xian. Alright, there are no problems. Very soon, the light from the mirror vanished, and the violet-robed guard directed it towards Zhuofeng. The same process happened. In the end, it was Jian Chen's turn. Jian Chen knew that there were many experts observing everything that happened here, so he remained indifferent and undertook the inspection of the mirror calmly. He showed no flaws in his facade at all. The mask from Mo Tianyun was even enough to trick so many peak experts, so he refused to believe a mere mirror would be able to expose his true identity. There are no problems. Let's go to the next mountain. Very soon, the light subsided, and the violet-robed guard stowed the mirror away. He left with the group of people. Clearly, the mirror was useless against Emo Tianyun's mask. There was not just a single group like this. Whether it was the interior mountains or the exterior mountains, there were over a dozen of these groups that ventured from mountain to mountain with similar mirrors and a few outsiders. Everyone, ranging from peak lords to newly accepted disciples, was inspected with the mirror. This god king called Jianchen has caused quite the disturbance. The entire desolate plain has lost its peace because of him. Han Exen stood on the top of the mountain and sighed emotionally when he watched the group leave. Chapter 2267. Leaving the Radiant Saint Hall after hearing Han Exen's words, Zhuo Feng nodded in agreement. He could not help but show admiration. This senior Jianchen really is impressive. It's rumored that he's only a god king, and he has already offended the famed solitary sword ancestor and heavenly king of azure brilliance. The two experts had hunted him down, yet he still survived until now. Senior Jianchen is also able to remain hidden against so many foreign peak experts who have to the desolate plain. Probably only Senior Jianchen can achieve something so astonishing among all the god kings in the saints' world. After more than a year of build-up, the matters regarding Jianchen had ceased to be any kind of secret. It had already become widespread and known by all. Naturally, Zhuo Feng had learnt of this from elsewhere as well. Jianchen felt extremely strange when he heard Zhuo Feng's praise and how Zhuo Feng referred to him as senior. He immediately glanced at Zhuo Feng in an extremely strange manner. Zhuo Feng seemed to sense Jianchen's gaze, so his face immediately darkened, and he glanced back at Jianchen coldly. He snorted icily before leaving. Who knows how he would feel once he discovered that the Changyang beside him was the senior Jianchen he was talking about. After leaving the mountain top, Jianchen returned to his dwelling. He was in no mood to continue cultivating now. He sat on the cold, hard ground as he sank into his thoughts. Not only did the Radiant Saint Hall opens its gates now, but it had even sent its disciples to cooperate with the outsiders, turning over every pebble of the mountains to look for him. This was not good news for Jianchen. Moreover, he knew that the inspection today was only a start. As time went on, the searching would become stricter and stricter. It might even end up becoming flawless. Even though he had Emo Tianyun's mask, which could hide him from most treasures and secret techniques, the mask was not all-powerful. Once he revealed a tiny hole in his story, exposure would await him. It looks like it's no longer suitable for me to remain in the Radiant Saint Hall. It might be safer out there, Jianchen thought. There were around 2 years left before the competition between the candidates. He had to last those 2 years no matter what. Once he entered the Tower of Radiance and got what he needed, it would not matter even if his identity was exposed. The next morning, a group of violet-robed guards flew down from the sacred hall that stood above the clouds before scattering towards the various mountains. They all bore a crystal containing information that they passed to the peak lords, who then passed it down to their disciples. Jianchen received a crystal from Han Exen. Jianchen silently viewed the thumb-sized crystal in his hand and checked the contents. As expected, everything in the crystal was information about himself. It was extremely detailed, describing his special traits, weapons used, laws comprehended, and various battle skills and secret techniques grasped. Without any exaggeration, everything that Jianchen had exposed in the Neptunian Divine Palace was recorded within the crystal. Nothing was missing. There was even some description regarding his profound sword chi. It was just unclear. The crystal was signed off as an announcement from the Radiant Saint Hall. It also urged on all the Radiant Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall to take part in the search for Jianchen. Clearly, the Radiant Saint Hall also wanted to join in on the search for Jianchen. Jianchen's eyes shone brightly as he clutched the crystal. He had just been thinking about the reasons he could use to leave the Radiant Saint Hall. The crystal had come at a perfect time. Afterwards, Jianchen arrived on the top of the soaring cloud's peak with the crystal and found Han Exen. Zhuo Feng, it's already extremely impressive that you're able to control Radiant Saint Force to such a degree. Don't always compare yourself to your junior brother Changyang. Your junior brother's cultivation is indeed weaker than yours, but he is quite talented in the control and grasp over Radiant Saint Force. Not everyone can do that. Currently, Han Exen sat on a large rock as he explained the usages of Radiant Saint Force to Zhuofeng. When Jianchen arrived, Han Exen stopped and looked at Jianchen. Immediately, he smiled amiably and asked, "Changyang, are you looking for anything?" Zhuofeng also discovered Jianchen's arrival, and his eyes immediately turned cold. Jianchen clasped his fist towards Han Exen and said, "Sir, I want to leave the mountains for some time and see whether I can find Jianchen." You overestimate yourself. Why don't you take a good look at yourself first before you think about looking for Senior Jianchen? Senior Jianchen is a god king. Even if you really do come across him out of chance, it'll be impossible for you to survive. Zhuofeng rebuked coldly before Han Exen could say anything. Zhuofeng! Han Exen's face sank slightly, and he immediately called out to get Zhuofeng to shut up obediently. Then he looked at Jianchen gently and shook his head. "Changyang, allow me to persuade you otherwise and cultivate on the soaring cloud's peak so that you can become a hallowed saint master when you have a two-colored soul core like your junior sister. Just don't get involved with the search for Jianchen. Even all the peak experts can't find any trace of his Jianchen, so how is it possible for you to find him easily? If you get involved, it'll just be a waste of time." "Sir, looking for Jianchen is only one of the reasons. The other reason is that I want to go out and have a look. I can also use it as an opportunity to train myself," said Jianchen. After a moment of thought, Han Exen ended up nodding in agreement. "All right. Since you're determined, I won't stop you. Changyang, you have to remember to wear the attire of a disciple from the Radiant Saint Hall at all times outside. The desolate plain is not peaceful. With your current cultivation, it'll be extremely dangerous, so the uniform will be the best thing to keep you safe. After all, our Radiant Saint Hall is one of the peak organizations on the desolate plain. Apart from the martial soul lineage, our Radiant Saint Hall isn't on bad terms with anyone, so it is rare for anyone to be bold enough to attack disciples of the Radiant Saint Hall. This is the medallion for a disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Take the medallion to the Foreign Affairs Hall and register yourself. Afterwards, you can leave the Radiant Saint Hall. And take this jade talisman with you. If you come across any danger or problems, crush it immediately, and I'll hurry over as quickly as I can." Han Exen warned Jianchen repeatedly before letting him leave. Afterwards, Jianchen went to the Foreign Affairs Hall and registered his leave with the medallion. Then he underwent various identity tests before leaving the Radiant Saint Hall all by himself. Chapter 2268. The last fragment. The Saints' world had a total of 49 great planes and 81 great planets. The 49 planes were actually 49 tremendous landmasses that hovered in space, where each one was larger than any of the 81 great planets. Among the 49 planes, there were 7 sacred planes. Every single one of them possessed a grand exalt. Although grand exalts were still grand primes, they had reached the limits of grand prime. They had comprehended at least a single law to completion, allowing them to become existences akin to the laws, where they could interfere with the operation of the laws and grasp the world with a single thought. As a result, if a grand exalt spent a long time cultivating on a plane, the laws there would be influenced by the grand prime, leading it to become much simpler and clearer. It would become several times easier for people to comprehend the laws of the world. This was how the 7 sacred planes of the Saints' world gained their name. The Prosper Plane was one of the 7 sacred planes. It was where the Anata Grand Prime of the 7 Grand Exalts spent most of her time cultivating. Meanwhile, the Anata Grand Prime's residency, the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, was located at the very center. That was also the holiest place on the entire Prosper Plane. It was a place revered by all. Even though there were many peak organizations and supreme experts on the Prosper Plane, the last organization they would want to provoke or offend would naturally be the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. Although the 7 Grand Exalts had either died or suffered injuries from the battle in the past, where even the Anata Grand Prime was rumored to have died many years ago, as long as the Heavenly Palace of Bishing possessed Exen, it would be able to remain standing in the Saints' world and would continue to strike awe in everyone's hearts. It was also because of Exin that the various experts on the Prosper Plane dared not act up. The majestic heavenly palace of Bisheng sat at the center of the Prosper Plane. It gave off a supreme presence at all times, like an ancient beast crouching there quietly. A group of golden-armored divine guards stood there silently like statues. They never moved, protecting the heavenly palace of Bisheng with loyalty. An old woman, fatigued from travel, stood near the entrance of the heavenly palace of Bisheng. She stood there politely with her head lowered. She had already stood there for a very long time, such that a thin layer of dust had formed on her clothes. Su Ran, the 8th Majesty wants me to tell you that you can't see the 1st Majesty. If you keep waiting here, it'll just be a waste of your time and effort. A divine general in golden armor walked out and said to the old woman with mixed feelings, I really have something extremely important to report to the 1st Majesty. If the 1st Majesty is unwilling to see someone as insignificant as me, then can I see the 8th Majesty? Su Ran asked bitterly. The divine general sighed gently when he saw how persistent Su Ran was. He said, then let me pass on the message. Whether the 8th Majesty wishes to see you or not will be up to luck. With that, the divine general made his way back into the heavenly palace of Bisheng. However, just when he had turned around, he was suddenly taken aback. A woman in a red dress who seemed to be in her 20s slowly made her way over. The woman was extremely beautiful, enough to outshine the moon. She strode over without giving off any presence at all. She seemed just like a mortal. However, the divine general immediately showed respect when he saw the woman. He clasped his fist and bowed in a hurry, greetings to the 8th Majesty. Junior Su Ran greets the 8th Majesty. Su Ran also bowed towards the woman in red with mixed feelings. The woman in red was the 8th Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bisheng, Bai Rong. You can go, Bai Rong said to the divine general. She spoke with a very soft, warm, and pleasant voice. Yes, 8th Majesty. The divine general bowed politely and quickly vanished within the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Bai Rong made her way towards Su Ran with gentle steps. She looked at Su Ran's face that had grown unfamiliar with age. She could still vaguely remember the beautiful, overcautious, and slightly naive little girl she had first seen several million years ago. It made Bai Rong sigh deeply. Bai Rong stared at Su Ran for a while before saying gently, Su Ran, I already know why you've come. We've learned about Master's Tower very long ago. This isn't something you should be concerned about, so just forget about it. Grandmaster's Enata Tower is with a junior called Jian Chen. Jian Chen's strength is weak. If he continues to hold onto the Enata Tower, it can be taken away at any other time, so please take back the Enata Tower as soon as possible, 8th Majesty, Su Ran pleaded. Bai Rong sighed gently, Master has orders for us not to interfere with this matter. As a result, let alone me, even if you find first senior sister, it'll be pointless. What? Does that mean that the Grandmaster, he's still? Su Ran immediately became stunned when he heard Bai Rong mentioned her master. She was in emotional turmoil. Do you understand now? This matter isn't something that we disciples can interfere with. Bai Rong looked at Su Ran deeply. She said no more, turning around and leaving. She vanished back into the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Grandmaster is still alive, Grandmaster is actually still alive. Bai Rong's words echoed through Su Ran's head constantly. She was so shocked that she struggled to calm herself. At the same time, a hazy figure shrouded by a dense layer of light from laws sat in outer space. The laws of the world were clearly presented about him, interweaving together into the truth of the world. The laws themselves seemed to be booming out. It was as if the person had become the laws themselves and represented the laws of the world, the supreme will of the universe. Disciple Exin greets Master. At this moment, a beautiful woman in white clothes appeared silently before the figure shrouded in light. She clasped her fist in respect. The woman was the 1st Majesty, Exin. She was the person who had forcefully barged through the formations of the Neptunian Divine Palace and destroyed the clone of the samsaric immortal Exalt. She was also the person who had struck awe in all the experts of the Saints' world, allowing the heavenly palace of Bishing to remain standing all this time. Master, I've found Senior Ancient Path's 1 spiritual soul and 5 animal souls, said Exing. At the same time, several specks of light flew out from her hand. These specks of light varied in sizes. Some were like souls, some were like blurry consciousnesses, and others were imprints. These specks of light were directed into the hand of the figure surrounded by light. He looked at the soul fragments and said, only a single spiritual soul remains out of Ancient Path's 3 spiritual souls and 7 animal souls. Once they are all brought together, I'll be able to rebuild Ancient Path's soul. Chapter 2269, The Mysterious Rock, 1. Master, may I ask where Senior Ancient Path's last spiritual soul is? The First Majesty asked politely. The figure shrouded in light fell silent. However, the light around him surged, becoming extremely blinding like a sun. At that moment, he seemed to have become the world, wielding the laws of the world, turning into the greatest will of the universe. With a single glance, he was able to see the source of the world and peer into both the past and the future. There seemed to be no secrets across the vast universe in his eyes. The last spiritual soul possesses a sliver of power from Ancient Path's will. Under the protection of this power, even grand exalts will struggle to find him, the figure shrouded in light said a while later. His voice contained all the sounds of the universe, making it impossible to discern his gender. Master, even you are unable to find the last spiritual soul of Senior Ancient Paths? Once I fully recover my cultivation, finding the last spiritual soul will be nothing difficult. The War Dragon Empire happened to be one of the 5 everlasting empires on the desolate plain. They possessed strength equal to the Radiant Saint Hall and was also a peak organization of the desolate plain. Jian Chen currently sat in an inconspicuous location within and in that was not particularly impressive in the revered imperial capital of the War Dragon Empire. He was in the white robes that represented his status as a Radiant Saint Master, and he ordered some small dishes. He drank and ate at leisure. The inn was not large, so it had been filled since long ago. Noisy and clamorous sounds rang out from every corner of the inn. A man's wealth is his own ruin by causing the greed of others. I've investigated this person called Jian Chen thoroughly. It's said that he's very powerful, where he made a name for himself in the Neptunian Divine Palace. He has extremely astonishing battle prowess, enough to make it into the rankings of the God King's throne. It's just a pity that the Enata Tower has doomed him. Now that the entire desolate plain has been sealed off, Jian Chen is doomed as long as he's still here. I just wonder how much longer he can hide for. It'll happen soon. As long as Jian Chen is still on the desolate plain, he'll be discovered before long. Those foreign organizations are searching the desolate plain with more and more care now. But I need to say that Jian Chen sure knows how to hide. He's able to hide even until now, away from the close search of so many peak experts. What do you think the Enata Tower is? How can a mere God King possess something like that? If Jian Chen doesn't hand over the Enata Tower, he'll definitely suffer an extremely miserable fate. He has made so many peak experts set out, so he's probably already caused them much displeasure. His fate won't be great even if he hands over the Enata Tower willingly, I think. Cultivators of various cultivation levels in the inn discussed the topic of Jian Chen loudly with great interest. In reality, similar discussions were not limited to this tiny inn. It was present everywhere across the desolate plain. Not only did all the cultivators on the desolate plain remember Jian Chen's name, but it had also become the topic of casual conversation for everyone. Jian Chen sat there quietly in his white robes. He eavesdropped on the various conversations, and he did not become perturbed at all. He remained calm the entire time. A while later, Jian Chen tossed some medium-quality divine crystals onto the table and left. He had already been to many places during the days he had come out. He had gained a rough understanding of the situation of the desolate plain. What pained him the most was the fact that basically all the teleportation formations across plains were closed down. Without a great enough status, it was impossible to take a teleportation formation off the desolate plain. Even outer space around the desolate plain had been sealed up by the various peak organizations, stopping the operation of all the spaceships. People were only allowed in but not out. Moreover, many small groups patrolled every inch of the desolate plain. These groups all possessed secret treasures that could see through disguises. They would test everyone that they passed by, and once someone seemed suspicious, they would be captured without any hesitation. From the very beginning, there were naturally many cultivators who wanted to conceal their identities. They began to resist as much as they could, or they even directly killed off the groups they came across. However, these people would basically be instantaneously suppressed the moment they started fighting. This was because peak experts would be paying attention to these patrolling groups at all times. It was also because of that these groups became more and more fearless, allowing them to run amok. Even Jian Chen had been stopped and questioned by several patrolling groups. However, as Jian Chen was a disciple of the Radiant Saint Master, the groups only inspected his identity and did not make too much trouble for him. Very clearly, these people were unwilling to go overboard with any of the peak organizations on the desolate plain. After leaving the inn, Jian Chen strolled through the busy streets. He clutched the crystal that contained the detailed information about himself and looked around as if he was looking for Jian Chen as he made his way out of the imperial capital. Very soon, Jian Chen arrived at the city gates. He shook his head in disappointment and murmured, "It's full of people here. It looks like finding Jian Chen really isn't easy. I better go to the next city to try my luck." As he said that, Jian Chen stowed the crystal away and left with Radiant Saint Force. Two middle-aged men followed him and walked over steadily from behind Jian Chen. They looked at the direction which Jian Chen had vanished off into as they could not help but sneer. "This Chang Yang is so foolish that he is cute like a child. He only has a one-colored soul core, yet he still wants to find Jian Chen. He's dreaming. He is indeed far too naive. Anyway, he has finally left Dragon City. Let's follow him. Once he's far away enough, we'll do it immediately. I heard that this Chang Yang has extremely impressive talent. It's a pity that he recklessly offended young Master Exen. He won't have much time left." The two middle-aged men communicate secretly before slowly rising up into the sky. They hurried off in Jian Chen's direction at a steady pace. At this moment, Jian Chen had arrived several million kilometers from the imperial capital of the War Dragon Empire. Just as he flew over a stinking swamp, the two middle-aged men silently appeared and approached Jian Chen from in front and behind. "Who are you?" Jian Chen immediately became alarmed. "You must be Chang Yang, right? You don't need to know who we are. All you need to know is that you're going to be dead very soon. Chang Yang, who told you to offend young Master Exen? There is only death for you once you've offended young Master Exen." The two middle-aged men sneered. They looked at Jian Chen like they were looking at an ant. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.